Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Husband and Wife Business. Fanny was so envious of Mo's treatment that she took advantage of her position as the boss and immediately went to Nanling and said, "I want one too." Obviously, she was very jealous of Mo's Lingu and she also wanted a flying machine that could set off her beauty. Of course, Nanling agreed to this. It was the boss's request, so she did it. But when Mo found out, she was different. She immediately found Fanny and said righteously, "Fanny, I heard that you asked Shiona to help you make a flying machine." Fanny nodded, and suddenly felt a little guilty. Then Mo raised her eyebrows and said, "How much are you going to spend on it?" Fanny was stunned. Bye. It's not that she didn't want to pay, but she didn't have much idea about this at all. She asked, "Mo, did you spend money to buy it?" Mo shook his head and said, "Of course I don't, this is a gift from him." Fanny probably understood, and she said coercively, "Oh, it's really different now that you have a husband's family. Have you started to manage the household for your husband?" Okay, how much do you say?" Mo said, "About 10 million. Fanny said, "Okay, I'll transfer it to you." As soon as she finished speaking, the money arrived. She said, "Okay. This is deducted from my pocket money, but the operating funds of Zhuoxia have not been used. You said that the operating funds are public accounts and should be separated from private property." Mo nodded and said, "Yes, now in addition to managing the public accounts of Zhuoxia, I also have to manage a family account book," she said seriously, but Fanny was stunned and asked in surprise, "Mo, are you serious?" Mo was slightly stunned, then smiled bitterly and said, "I just think it's time to take it seriously. When I went home last time and saw my father drunkenly telling his mother about his love for Shion in front of the three-dimensional photo, I knew that this was probably the only way." Fanny nodded her head and said, "But Mo, didn't you tell your father that we were just a stopgap measure at the beginning?" Mo nodded and said, "Of course I did. But I don't know what my father was thinking. He wanted to verify it himself, and then he was poisoned by Shion. Then, all the people under your father's command became familiar with Shion at an astonishing speed, and they often drank and had fun together." Mo said here, not knowing whether she was relieved or entangled, and then said, "When everyone around me thinks that he is my husband, and I don't hate him, then I think some things should be considered." Fanny said in astonishment, "Are you ready to take it seriously?" "But what does he think?" Mo smiled gently and said, He doesn't need to know this." She was ready to quietly start running her own family. Fanny rolled her eyes, only to feel that her good girlfriend could not go back. She said lazily, Okay, you just take care of your little family, unlike me, who can only be alone." Mo smiled and rubbed her red hair and said, "What are you talking about? Shonen listens to you the most, and you can make us to accompany you with just one word." Fanny was happy, she laughed and said, "Okay, I'm ready. Since your aircraft is a crescent, Mo, then mine is the sun. Let your husband make a little sun for me." Mo smiled and nodded in response. So this husband and wife shop opened for business. Nanling was responsible for the work, and Mo was responsible for negotiating prices with customers. It was a great success. Sure enough, when Nanling found his family account and found that there was already an astonishing 10 million family funds in it, he became energetic. Although it was a family asset, he was excited to have money. This was a psychological problem for him. After all, when he was a child, he grew up in the lower class area. Lingzhu points meant the hope of survival. At the time, all his actions were centered around getting more income, which made it difficult for him to change this habit now. He liked to see that he had money in his account, but he had no idea how to use it after it was in the account. Because he had a wealthy wife who always gave him credit recently, he had now developed the habit of spending money without bargaining. Fanny's sun was easy to make, because now that the Fire-Wing flying sword had been successful, he only needed to slightly change the design concept to make the sun that Fanny wanted. But if it was just a sun, wouldn't it seem that he got the 10 million too easily? He also made some adjustments to the performance of this aircraft. For this purpose, he specially installed a special spectrum controller on this sun, which is simply a light and shadow special effects device. It has the special light and shadow effects that Nanling input in advance, and then let Fanny adjust it according to her needs. Of course, you can also choose to compile new special effects yourself, but that requires some inspiration and creativity. You can imagine how excited Fanny was when Nanling threw this 2-meter diameter mechanical disc aircraft to her. The entire aircraft has a golden and red paint job. After starting up, it is all red, and there is a golden light and fire circle around it. This is already the full special effect. When Fanny loaded this aircraft named Scorching Sun and flew into the sky, she seemed to have turned into a fireball, which was extremely dazzling. More importantly, when she passed through the clouds and revealed her figure, the white clouds were illuminated by the light of the special effects device, which made her seem to appear in a golden cloud. At this time, she was like a goddess of the sun. Anyway, the visual effect was directly pulled to the full. Fanny was very satisfied. She felt that Nanling was worthy at being Nanling. The things she made were in line with her wishes. At this moment, Nanling felt that Mo's mood beside him was a little strange. It seemed that he was not very happy. He quickly said, "I can also write this special effect to you, and I will definitely do it better than Boss Fanny." Mo couldn't help but smile when she heard it. She said, "I don't care about this." "Why do you say that suddenly?" Nanling was entangled. He couldn't say that he actually saw that Sister Mo seemed to be in a bad mood. However, because he was used to dealing with Mo who said one thing and meant another, he thought about it and said, "After all, I always want to save the best for." Mo quickly stopped him and said, "Okay, I think I understand." The main reason was that she didn't want to hear cheesy love words, which was too embarrassing. So Fanny asked Mo before, "Have you discussed this with Nanling?" Mo felt that there was no need to discuss it at all. This guy must be very happy. She said, "I see you have also studied thunder magic. Have you ever considered designing a flying device like the Thunder Wing for yourself?" This was her focus. Why are Nanling and Fanny Knives flying devices both of fire attribute, but hers is of thunder attribute? This makes her look a little strange. The reserved Mo was only willing to use strange to describe her mood at the moment. Nanling's eyes were blank for a moment, and then he said, "Yes, but I will try again after I have nurtured the Fire Wing Flying Sword. After all, my realm is still low, and it is impossible for me to nurture 2 spiritual treasures at the same time. Well, I guess I will start refining Thunder spiritual treasures before I break through the Jindan stage." He answered seriously, which made Mo feel a little helpless. She calmed down and said, "I know, you have to be careful when you practice on your own." She never doubted whether Nanling could improve his cultivation to the level of breaking through the Jindan stage. Chapter 252. Hostile to the world will. Nanling lay on his fire wing flying sword, lazily basking in the sun, his legs crossed, leisurely. Although he seemed to be doing nothing, he was actually monitoring the robot army collecting biological samples below. Recently, the robot army has been resisted with a strong intensity, which is quite distressing. Nanling also slowly felt some abnormalities from the collective consciousness ocean that permeated the entire planet. Originally, this collective consciousness was not biased, as if no matter what Nanling and others did here, it had nothing to do with it. Because although the life on this planet is complex and numerous, they have no unified consciousness at all, and may not even have the ability to think. But now, he vaguely sensed some hostility from this collective consciousness ocean. And this hostility has already had a subtle impact on him, that is, his speed of perceiving and refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has begun to slow down. Obviously, there is so much spiritual energy on this planet, but these spiritual energies have begun to resist him and are not easily refined by him. This is the problem. Of course, this problem is not a big deal. After all, humans invented the spirit furnace to deal with the extremely scarce spiritual environment in the infinite void. Mo still warned him to use his divine consciousness with caution. After all, when they sensed the collective consciousness ocean at high altitude, they had also noticed the risk of assimilation. But Nanling would not listen to Mo this time. He had his own views and cognition of divine consciousness. At this time, he was sensing this change with his divine consciousness, and at the same time guessing, how was this collective consciousness ocean formed? Does it represent the world will of this planet? Or in other words, the so-called heavenly way? Nanling felt this, and then at a certain moment, he suddenly felt that the hostility from the collective consciousness ocean suddenly rose. Its manifestation was that the creatures on the ground suddenly became irritable and began to attack the biological sampling robots sent by the colony frantically. Countless life forms continued to attack the robots, one after another, and the creatures farther away were still pouring in. Nanling looked down from the sky and felt that the world around him seemed to have suddenly come alive, and everything was gathering around the robot team. Seeing this, Nanling once again acted as an arsonist. He spread the flames without hesitation, causing the surrounding area to fall into a sea of fire. These robots were all made on the assembly line. Although the time cost of making a specimen is infinitely close to zero, it is also a cost, so it is better to save it if possible. However, what surprised him was that when he burned the surrounding creatures with flames, he felt that the hostility against him became stronger. He seemed to be marked as a target, and any behavior that harmed the life of this world would become a factor in aggravating the hostility. But this is extremely unreasonable, unless there is a subject consciousness in this ocean of collective consciousness, which identifies him as an enemy. Nanling felt curiously, and then he felt that the air was filled with water vapor. He felt that there was a strong water attribute spiritual power in the sky that was gathering rapidly, and this gathering was unreasonable. These spiritual powers seemed to be born out of thin air. No, it did not appear out of thin air. Nanling carefully sensed it and found that the water vapor in a large area around was gathering here, and then formed a large rain cloud. It was just like when he created rain clouds for Mo in Tuxing. He immediately sent a message to Mo, and she appeared beside him not long after. She stood proudly in the sky, with the silver moon shining behind her, making her whole person have a hazy and mysterious beauty. Her arrival here was like a fuse. The electric light splashing around her completely ignited the thunder in the rain cloud, and it began to flash the light of thunder. Mo's eyes also brightened up all of a sudden. This was an extremely rare opportunity for her to feel the thunder in nature. Nanling smiled and said, "I suggest you let go of your mind and feel it well. This is very important." Mo hesitated for a moment, but still followed this advice. Nanling also began to let go of his feelings. He felt that this world might really have a world will, but so what? If he had traveled to ancient times, he would definitely be very cautious about the world will, which was like the heavenly way. But now he felt that this unintelligent thing seemed to be very useful, right? So he lowered his altitude slightly, and suddenly a gust of wind blew, spreading the fire below. At this moment, thunder rumbled in the sky, and then heavy rain poured down. During this process, the attack from the sky also began to bombard Nanling, which was like a heavenly punishment. He could feel that he was now the biggest enemy of this sky, and this sky was punishing him in the form of thunder. He was suspended in the air, as if a lightning rod was inserted into his body, and the thunder was looking for him as if it had eyes. I never thought that I could actually experience a wave of tribulation. Nanling also laughed dumbly and laughed himself to death. He could be so leisurely, naturally because the thunder attack was ineffective. Come to think of it, his pure color faith is a combat armor that has stepped into the threshold of high level. How could it be destroyed by this kind of natural thunder? Anyway, Nanling felt that if this thunder became the thunder of tribulation in the novel of his previous life, then he might really not be able to survive. After all, that world is irrational, and the era he lives in emphasizes science. Although the thunderbolt cannot penetrate his armor, it is still uncomfortable to be struck like this all the time. Nanling was about to leave the area covered by rain clouds, but he saw Mo standing beside him in a trance. He was too familiar with this state. Wasn't it just a sudden enlightenment? He could only stay where he was, and while being struck, he also felt the operation of the spiritual power between heaven and earth. Gradually, he also had some experience. That is, this ocean of collective consciousness seems to be able to affect the spiritual tide of this planet to a certain extent, and the change of spiritual energy can further change the real celestial phenomenon. The wind, rain, clouds, and thunder are the changes reflected in reality after the change of spiritual power, and the driving force of this change is the ocean of collective consciousness. For Nanling, this is like a proof of the relationship between the three spirit, energy, and spirit, which makes him see more possibilities. For this planet, wind, rain, clouds and thunder are the essence, natural spiritual power is the key, and the vast ocean of collective consciousness is the shin, which is surprisingly consistent with the elements of the human body. Moreover, the current scene shows Nanling a more intuitive way, that is the way the shin affects the essence or reality through the key. It is said that learning from heaven and earth, the ancients really did not lie. Nanling fell into another kind of perception. Mo's perception was the touch brought to her by the rapidly growing thunder, which was equivalent to this planet demonstrating the essence of thunder to her face. Nanling's perception was the relationship between her own essence, ki and spirit, and whether there was a conversion relationship between herself and the outside world, will and matter, and thoughts and reality. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 253 The Big Devil. Nanling was still feeling the relationship between the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit. Not long after, the thunder between heaven and earth dissipated. Perhaps it was because he found that he could not kill Nanling, the unparalleled old demon, and finally chose to give up. At the same time, Nanling also felt that the malice shrouding his head had dissipated a lot. In his opinion, it was not that he had repaid the cause and effect or something, but to condense such a heavenly punishment seemed to consume a lot of this ocean of collective consciousness, that is, the world consciousness. Is it not working anymore? Nanling thought about it, and then set another fire below. Very good, he felt that the world will's malice towards him had increased a little, but there was no substantial action, it was really not working anymore. At this time, Nanling was a peerless demon to this world, and a demon that even the heavenly way could not do anything about. This cognition made Nanling feel very strange. He had always been kind to others, so how could he become a demon? Perhaps, this was the difference caused by different cognitions and different positions. There are still many mysteries in this ocean of collective consciousness, and there will be plenty of time to explore them in the future. Even Nanling felt that he could stay here for a while and gain more insights. At the same time, Mo beside him also showed an expression of sudden enlightenment. She exclaimed, "I saw what real thunder and lightning are." Her spiritual power bloomed all over her body, and her eyes were also filled with blue lightning, revealing an extraordinary attitude. "I understand." As soon as she'd finished speaking, she suddenly reached out and touched the fire that Nanling made for her. I saw a burst of pure thunder spiritual power flowing on the new moon, without any leakage of lightning, but the whole thing seemed to have changed its form. Only then did Mo say, "I feel that the thunder spiritual power is not running so smoothly inside it. We should not simply regard it as a carrier or a channel for the circulation of spiritual power, but," she paused and said in an inexplicable tone, "it should be integrated with spiritual power." As soon as the voice fell, a layer of fine electric net appeared on the entire silver-white body of the Feiyu. This was a net woven by thunder spiritual power. Then, in this dense spiritual power, the shape or material nature of this feather moon actually underwent some extremely subtle changes. It seemed to be there and not there, as if it was no longer a real object. Nanling was stunned when he saw this scene. He remembered the functions of the legendary magic weapon he knew, and the next moment, such a large feather moon suddenly shrank extremely in Mo's hand, and finally shrank into a rich crescent-shaped thunder spiritual power pattern, floating in front of Mo. Mo thought about it, then stretched out the back of her left hand and pressed it. A crescent pattern also appeared on the back of her hand. Nanling was surprised again when he saw this, and he said, "I thought you would put it directly into your body." Mo was at a loss for a moment and asked, "Why would I put it into my body?" Very good, people of this era really don't have this common sense. Of course, Nanling has no position to evaluate whether Mo did it right or not, because he can't do it at this time. As for how Mo did it, she herself had no idea, she just felt that she could do it, so she did it. Nanling could only feel helpless about this, knowing that this was the advantage brought by Mo's Jindan realm. It was really that when you reach the realm, you can do it naturally, and if you don't reach the realm, you can't figure it out no matter how hard you try. Fortunately, Mo was still willing to share her feelings with him at this time. She said, "I think it's still there, and even in my perception it has always been the same and has not changed at all. It's just that its essence is a little different, just like the spiritual power composition." Back to the landing module of the colony, Nanling held Mo's hand and never let go. This hand is really white, but he only sees the trace of the thunder spiritual power. This hand is tender, but he still only touches the trace. This hand is fragrant, and he even leaned over to smell it. Mo was very embarrassed, especially staring at Fanny's strange eyes, and felt that he couldn't raise his head. "Are you okay?" Nanling's eyes were still staring at the tender hand without moving away. He said, "No, I'm curious about how it attaches to your body. Is it like a tattoo to change the skin structure?" He touched the mark again, and felt a burst of stimulation brought by the thunder spiritual power, and felt very interesting. Then Mo was numb from his touch. Wasn't this posture too vulgar? She wanted to pull her hand back, but she couldn't make up her mind. Forget it. He was her husband anyway. What was wrong with him touching her hand? Mo's bottom line was obviously breached once. She decided to let it go and let Nanling play with this hand. This kind of mentality of playing back was really interesting. It was full of a strong sweet taste. Fanny, who was watching next to her, felt the sweet feeling at the time and turned her head to distance herself. It was really unbearable to watch. However, at this time, Li Ji reported to them a very shocking thing. You two should stop showing affection here for the time being. We have encountered something. Mo quickly took the opportunity to pull her hand back from Nanling's hand, and then asked calmly, "What's the matter?" Nanling pouted with regret. This touch was really good. He himself couldn't figure out whether he was touching his hand in the name of research, or studying the mark for the sake of touching his hand. Li Ji said, "I can't say whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Anyway, you should go to the No. 3 mine first." Nanling and Mo didn't say anything, and they both walked outside. They soon arrived at the No. 3 mine, where there was a long gravity conveyor belt connected. The fully loaded mine carts were suspended on the gravity belt and sent to the refusion furnace of the landing module. But at this time, several mine carts were stacked next to the conveyor belt, and the ore inside was scattered all over the ground. A group of robots were rummaging and picking up the ore, but Nanling knew that this was actually controlled by Li Ji. The AI of ordinary robots does not have this recognition ability. Nanling walked up and asked curiously, "Is there anything wrong with these ores?" Li Ji said, "We found fossils that are suspected to be muscle tissue, so I asked you to come and have a look." Nanling frowned. This was another blind spot in his knowledge. However, Mo said cautiously, "This is not reasonable. Although some ancient creatures with strong bodies may have muscle fossils, the living bodies on this planet are highly oxidizable. In theory, their muscle tissues will rot quickly and should not leave fossils." Li Ji shook her head and said, "No, you missed something. The research results of Governor Jioshan show that if the activation factor found on this planet is stimulated to a certain extent, or if the activation factor strengthens the carrier to a certain extent, it will stabilize quickly." Nanling came to his senses after listening and said, "So, Sister Li Ji, are you judging that this muscle fossil comes from an ancient life on this planet that already has a mature evolved body?" Li Ji said, "This is the most likely event." Mo said without hesitation, "Prepare the equipment, I want to do a test." She became interested. This planet is indeed a treasure, but it's a pity that Governor Jioshan did not develop it properly. Chapter 254 Giant Beast Fossils. Muscle tissue fossils are definitely rare. What's even more incredible is that this fossil seems to be in the middle of the transformation of biological tissue into stone, which can be called a semi-fossil. Not long after Mo moved these fossils into the laboratory, she extracted a gelatinous biomass from these fossils. This biomass itself has lost its biological activity, like a collection of dead cells. However, these dead cells have begun to transform into inorganic matter over the long years, presenting a very unique intermediate state. More importantly, everyone felt some spiritual power fluctuations in this colward. Is this actually a spiritual material? It's just that this semi-fossil biological glue is so rare that even if human civilization has expanded to the entire Milky Way, at least no one in the ancient domain has heard of anyone seeing this thing. Fanny was overjoyed and felt that she was so lucky. She actually discovered another amazing new substance. Although this time it was not unobservable dark matter, the discovery of this semi-fossil biological glue once again showed Fanny the joy of being a pioneer. It's really great to keep discovering new things. At this time, Thongshi's voice came from Zhuoxia. He said, "Master, they have sent a message. They are preparing to enter hyperspace flight and will arrive in about a week. Another good news. After Gichen brought enough research teams, they should not be needed here, right?" However, Nanling felt a little scared. After all, every time Boss Fanny got lucky, it meant that some people were going to be unlucky. He had been unlucky before, but what about this time? However, he was a little unsure. After all, the people in the entire colony were gone. This should be considered a sacrifice of bad luck, right? But what if the goddess of fate thought that these people had been changed by the activation factor and were no longer human? Nanling was very uncertain in his heart. He just thought it would be better to let Uncle Gichen come earlier. After all, as a biological father, Gichen was able to raise Fanny to such a big age, so he must have a tough life. This mentality lasted until the next day, and he went from worrying about gains and losses to panic. Because the other 3 mines successively received news that similar muscle fossils were also found, and they were found on a large scale. Li Ji drove a mining cart to Nanling. One of the robots lifted a stone on it and pointed at the flower-like figure on it and said in Li Ji's voice, "Look, this is a fossil of a neurone. It's really a huge neurone. If this is really a fossil of a neurone, then this 1-meter-high section represents how huge the original creature was." Nanling realized that something was wrong. He was stunned and flew up to the sky again to look down. No way, can this be true? His heart was full of shocking speculations. He named the plateau in front of him Giant Beast Plateau, but in fact it was more because the plateau looked like a giant beast lying on the ground. Even if his imagination was big, he didn't really think of it as a real giant beast. But now he had to change this idea. When he dug out a group of muscle fossils and huge neurons on this giant beast plateau, this was a realistic problem that could not be ignored. He was moved and quickly called up various scan information about this place. Conventional scans showed a relatively vague structure inside the plateau, showing that the core of this mountain plateau was composed of large areas of rocks. But one of the surprising points is that the distribution of the mineral veins inside this plateau is too strange, or rather too concentrated. The so-called mineral veins are actually a general term for metal minerals. The metal veins in this giant beast plateau were all concentrated deep inside the plateau. At least if the excavation point on the colony is to be touched, it must be dug diagonally downward for 4 or 5 kilometers. This is an astonishing thickness. Nanling's pupils jumped. He marked and traced the locations of these metal veins, and then put them into the three-dimensional map of the entire giant beast plateau. Does this look like the internal organs of a giant beast? He asked the person next to him. There was no one beside him, but Liji's voice had already sounded in his ears with certainty. That's right, the place where these metal materials gather is the location of the giant beast's organs. Also, under the spiritual power detector, the entire giant beast plateau shows weak spiritual power, which is also abnormal. Originally, those people didn't take it seriously, because the life forms of the entire planet are weak spiritual power attributes. After all, the spiritual energy on this planet is too rich, even exceeding the concentration of the ancient star. But now it seems that this weak spiritual power attribute covers up many things, and it even blocks the further in-depth scanning of the spiritual power detector. Nanling nodded and said, even the scanning of ordinary detectors has been affected, and the picture we get is very blurry. He said with some horror in his eyes, if this entire giant beast plateau is a fossil formed by the death of the ancient giant beast, then we can regard this entire giant beast plateau as a treasure. Of course, ordinary instruments cannot map the internal situation of a treasure. This is already very close to the truth. Because at this time, all the detection equipment on the Zhuoxia can't detect Nanling's fire-wing flying sword, Moslingyu and Fanna's burning sundae. It was under this circumstance that the development of the entire colony stagnated for 2 whole days. There is no doubt that everyone was a little overwhelmed by this horrific situation and did not dare to continue to use their huge excavation equipment to dig holes in the giant beast plateau. At this time, Mo had already made a preliminary but complete analysis of the extracted gel from the muscle fossil. Nanling looked at the analysis report and exclaimed that this substance was incredible. It turned out to be an extremely magical polymer with extremely strong physical and energy properties. After reaching a certain scale, it can withstand energy bombardment close to the level of the main gun of the Zhuoxia, and can also withstand physical impacts at the level of asteroid impacts. It even has a certain self-repair ability. This is a very strong biological material. Unfortunately, with the limited research equipment of Mo, it is impossible to parse out the synthetic formula of this biopolymer, otherwise the Zhuoxia Adventure Group would have made a fortune. But even so, Fanny asked with shining eyes, even if we can't synthesize it artificially, what if we dig up all of this giant beast plateau? Mo said, we don't need all of it. Even if it's only 1,000th or 1/10,000th, it's enough to replace the new coating on the hull of the Zhuoxia. Fanny looked at the blood-red jelly, then gritted her teeth and said, let's do it. Start mining immediately, and then build extraction equipment. Mo frowned and said, this is too weird. I suggest you wait until the master and the others come before making a decision. Anyway, Master Gichen will not treat you unfairly. Fanny shook her head and said willfully, that won't work. What he gave me and what I took myself are 2 different concepts. She added, I also know that this is a bit risky. The things on this giant beast plateau and even this planet are too weird. As she spoke, she couldn't help but look at Nanling. She believed that Nanling could always come up with some good solutions. So she said, Xiaonan, what do you think? Chapter 255 Continue Exploration. Xiaonan, what do you think? This sentence was extremely magical to Nanling. He couldn't help but smile bigly. He didn't know when he became so omnipotent. But since the boss asked him for his opinion, he said after a little thought, if that's the case, I think we can start with just 1 mine tunnel. Fanny wanted to say something, but Nanling continued, boss, don't worry, I know what you mean, but think about it, we have only found the fossils of the giant beast's muscles, and there are so many uses for it, so are there any fossils of bones and blood in it? And if we dig from this direction, can we easily dig out the giant beast's brain? Fanny's eyes suddenly brightened, and the spiritual power manifested in her eyes, which was as bright as a searchlight. Sure enough, her attention was diverted to a more interesting thing. Nanling touched his chin and said, "Speaking of which, the value of this planet is too great. What if someone comes to mess with us while we are focusing on excavation and exploration? It's not like we haven't encountered this kind of situation before." Fanny's eyes immediately condensed again. Nanling was right. That's how they encountered the Death Star pirates. Fanny became completely alert, especially when she realized how precious this planet was. She said carefully, "I understand. If that's the case, then the most important thing is to build a planetary defensive force. Sister Liji and Hongxi, I can only leave this matter to you. This is also what you were best at." Liji and Hongxi agreed one after another. They felt that this kind of task was indeed within their expertise and was very appropriate. Mo smiled with relief at the scene. She found that Nanling's guiding exhortation was much better than her directly telling Fanny what to do. Although she was a little jealous that her best friend of so many years actually listened to Nanling more, as long as the result was good, it would be fine. And Mo believed that as long as Fanny was calm and rational enough and didn't get carried away, there would be no accidents that could knock them down. Sure enough, Fanny turned very quickly with a clear mind. Her eyes lit up again and she said, "That's very interesting. Do you think this is just like the Galaxy Fairy we've been playing before? The same thing is to build a base, expand production capacity, strengthen defense, and build military strength. Compared to the game, we can mobilize many more resources in reality." Liji agreed, "Yes, this King Shuanya star system is very rich. The Juxia can even build a base directly on an asteroid with local materials, and then push it to the outer orbit of King Shuanya to serve as an orbital weapon." Fanny's eyes lit up and said, "This is a good idea. It can form a defensive force as quickly as possible." Thongxia said worriedly, "But this will reduce the defensive force of the colony." Fanny laughed and said, "You don't think you can underestimate us just because you broke through to the 9th level of foundation building yesterday. Don't forget that we are Jindan cultivators, and there is a landing module here. With this landing module, we can deal with small starships that come to cause trouble calmly. And I believe that with you in space, you won't let fleet-level enemies bully us easily, right?" Everyone thought it made sense. Nanling was impressed by the wealth of Boss Fanny again. Why did he suddenly feel so emotional? It was because he remembered the landing module that was discarded in the underground magma of Katy Star. That was a high-tech vehicle worth 8 billion. Its value lies in the fact that even if it is soaked in the depths of the underground magma, as long as it can be dug out, it can still be used normally without any major repairs. So Boss Fanny really didn't know how expensive firewood and rice were, and she threw away 8 billion generously. Although she sold the planet for 10 billion, this matter really can't be calculated like this. Fortunately, after the current Boss Fanny experienced the incident of being asked for wages by him, she has grown up after all. He feels that he really plays a pivotal role in the growth of Fana. Everyone was busy according to their respective division of labor. Liji also gave Mo and Nanling the operation rights of various ground facilities. They will control these machines on behalf of Liji to continue production and collection. Now they have confirmed that the entire giant beast plateau is a huge fossil. However, there is still some soil and rocks on the surface of the plateau, which can be collected to continue the development of the base. Nanling even thought that throwing all those strange creatures into the blender and then throwing them into the heavy fusion reactor together can also transform them into what he needs. So, under his control, the base suddenly became bloodthirsty. Well, at least he is extremely bloodthirsty for the creatures on this planet. But from his perspective, this is not the same thing at all. He is just using local materials to build the base. These inexplicable and strange creatures are just some building materials for him. However, Nanling felt that he appeared more evil in the collective consciousness of this planet. The resistance and hostility he felt were getting worse and worse. He even felt that when the heavenly dose slowed down, the first thing he did was to strike him again. He was responsible for collecting resources, while his wife Mo was responsible for continuing to dig the mines. She screened and chose the No. 3 mine where the problem was first discovered to start digging. The huge machinery roared. She seemed to have learned Nanling's spirit and called over the excavation equipment in the other 3 mines, making the output of this mine comparable to that of the 3 mines. It can be said that the production capacity of super biopolymers met Fanny's psychological expectations. Fanny was very happy now. She felt that everything was going according to her ideal state. For the first time, she felt that the team she created was well coordinated. Well, in fact, everyone would deal with the various sudden whims of a certain young lady. The base control by Nandling always had to do some rigorous things. He began to manufacture a large number of robots, military vehicles, war weapons, etc. And considering the characteristics of this planet, half of these weapons and vehicles are arson. The other half are energy weapons and kinetic weapons. He will not only make a single type of weapon, because the fault tolerance rate is too low. And making more weapons is also a convenient way for Nandling to collect building materials. He just needs to keep setting fires to burn the surrounding lives to death, and then let the robots shuttle the ash. Well, this sounds like a Demon King's move. There is no way. To this planet, Nandling and his companions are the extraterritorial demons. Chapter 256. Giant Beast Blood Vessels. The mining work led by Mo had to be stopped again after 2 days because they made another major discovery. That is, after they dug a 1-kilometer-long mine, they suddenly found a circular tubular passage leading to the bottom. Without defining the nature of this passage for the time being, Nandling immediately handed over the small detector and signal relay that had been prepared long ago to Mo. Mo felt very comfortable about this. When she cooperated with Nandling, she never had to worry about preparations because Nandling could always think of the situations they might face first and made advanced preparations. In this way, the mining work came to a temporary halt, and they first explored the pipe-like passage that appeared. A group of small hummingbird-like aircraft rushed into this tubular tunnel with a diameter of more than 1 meter, and then there were signal transfer devices fixed on the inner wall of the passage every 10 meters to maintain the stability of the signal of the hummingbird detector. Mo couldn't help but complain. If I'm not mistaken, your signal transfer device can ensure that the channel is unobstructed within 100 meters, right? Nandling nodded and said, but the spiritual interference environment will reduce the stability of the channel. Mo said, in that case, it is enough to set up a beacon every 80 meters. One at most every 50 meters is already a very conservative choice. Nandling shook his head and said, no, what if there is an abnormality that makes 1 or even 2 beacons broken? So my current setting is that even if 4 beacons are broken in a row, I can still maintain a stable and unobstructed channel. Mo was completely convinced by Nandling's rigorousness that was deeply rooted in his bones. Well, if he is happy to do so, then let him do it. Anyway, with modern technology, as long as there are sufficient materials, there will definitely be no shortage of means of production. It was under this situation that Nandling simply built a production line for hummingbird detectors and small beacons. Hummingbird detectors were continuously sent into the channel, and soon all the information about the underground channel was explored. In front of him, a large 3-dimensional network diagram slowly appeared. The network was actually full of similar tubular tunnels. The tunnel they dug was already considered narrow, and the largest one was even 7 or 8 meters in diameter. This huge underground structure was even beyond Nandling's perception range, but one thing was certain, he could vaguely feel some strange sounds from these tubular tunnels. But he was not sure what these sounds were made of. Perhaps it was just the collision of the detectors with each other or the collision of the tunnel walls. At this time, Mo looked at the 3-dimensional tunnel network diagram with a serious expression and said, this looks like the blood vessel network of the giant beast. It seems that the giant beast plateau was once formed by a terrifying giant beast. It is certain that what we have to do now is to get what we can get from the fossil of this giant beast. Fanny was ready to go. She said, no matter what it is, go down and see. Mo and Nandling immediately held her down on the left and right. Mo said, wait, let's find out the situation first. Really, this girl is still so anxious. Why did you drill into the hole? Nandling said, boss, if anything happens, you obviously won't be able to do anything in such a narrow tunnel. How about we increase our efforts to dig at the same time? Fanny thought it made sense, but she thought about it and felt a little bored. But she didn't know what was going on in her mind, and suddenly she had another idea. She said, we have discovered its blood network after digging for so long, so can we think from another angle? Can we drill through the hole that already exists in its body? The hole that already exists. Nandling and Mo both had a bad feeling. Fanny completely opened up her mind and continued, yes, for example, its original mouth, nostrils and ears. I don't know if this giant beast has these organs, but I think we can try. Oh, and its butt. Nandling immediately resisted, I won't drill into the butt of anything. Mo also nodded firmly, this is impossible. Fanny was also disgusted by her own thoughts, and quickly said, yes, you're right, but what do you think of my proposal? At this moment, Liji's voice sounded in the communication. The first defensive satellite has entered the synchronous orbit over the colony. I'm on this satellite now and can continue to provide you with technical support. Mo asked. Is Redstone in control of the Vuoxia now? Liji confirmed. Yes, he is making more synchronous orbit defensive satellites, but Vuoxia can assist him in doing these things. Fanny said excitedly. That's great, then we can continue our adventure. Shonen, what do you think? She has become accustomed to skipping Mo and asking Nanling directly for his opinion, because she subconsciously feels that Nanling will definitely be able to give her a satisfactory answer. Nanling sighed in his heart, and after exchanging glances with Mo Fei, he immediately made a judgment. In this way, Sister Liji and I will continue to preside over the mining and exploration here, and Sister Mo and the boss, you just do what you want to do. If you encounter any needs, we can still provide you with backup here. Fanny nodded with satisfaction, but she was still a little reluctant. After all, this way Nanling would not be able to give her advice. And Mo also nodded with satisfaction. What could be more important than personally following Fanny to restrain her wild thinking? So, it was another satisfactory result for all parties. The two sides operated separately, and Nanling began to continue to explore the network of blood vessels of this giant beast through the hummingbird detector. His goal was actually very clear, that is, to enter the heart of the giant beast for exploration. And the blood network connects the organs, and he also wants to see what is different about the metal veins formed in the organs of this giant beast. However, during the operation, he thought of a doubt, that is, where did the blood in the blood vessels go? Even if the blood in the blood vessels will dry up, the natural drying process seems to cause the blood vessels to close synchronously. But now the blood vessels are still there. Does that mean that at least before the blood vessels of the giant beast are completely hardened, the blood vessels are still filled with blood? Nanling, with doubts, finally put the hummingbird detector into a huge and dark cavity. There is no doubt that this is the location of the giant beast's heart. However, there is no sign of blood in this petrified heart, as if the huge amount of blood in its body has been drained by something. Liji suddenly said, "Look down, look at the ground." Nanling unexpectedly switched to the picture of the hummingbird detector facing the ground. He didn't think there was anything there at first, because it looked very flat and empty. However, when he looked carefully at this time, he found that this ground seemed to be paved with a thick layer of pebbles. Nanling controlled the hummingbird detector to get closer and observe carefully. Then he unexpectedly saw some kind of biological keratin-like structure on this layer of pebbles. He immediately knew that he had delivered again. P.S. It took 3 or 5 days to write more every day, and finally got another chapter and update on this day. Chapter 257 Ancient Awakening. Nanling operated the hummingbird detector to study the pebbles at the bottom of the heart cavity. He even wanted to see if he could take samples through the weak force of the hummingbird machine. The first thing was to measure the size of the densely arranged pebbles below. These pebbles were not small in size, about half a meter to 1 meter high. At the same time, biological detection showed that this should actually be the eggs of some creatures, but because of the long time, the horny eggshells have become fossils. This surprised Nanling. There were actually other creatures parasitizing in the heart of the giant beast. Although the only fossil eggs of this creature are now, it is still a very amazing discovery. He operated the hummingbird detector to conduct a simple survey, and then in groups of 4, put down the slender hooks and prepared to try to pick the smallest one to take back. This was relatively smooth at the beginning, but it was not right later. When the hook caught a fossil egg, it turned out that the eggshell was abnormally fragile, and the hummingbird aircraft only pulled a crack on its surface with a little force. Nanling immediately relaxed the control of the hummingbird, and then carefully observed the state of the fossil egg. As a result, at this moment, the eggshell suddenly shattered, and then a row of sharp mouthparts suddenly appeared, swallowing the hummingbird mechanically at once. Nanling was startled at the time, and his head tilted back, and then he immediately switched to another screen to monitor. As a result, something that made his scalp tingle happened. He found that as the fat and dark red short-legged insect broke out of the shell, the entire empty space was filled with a series of clicking sounds. Each fossil egg piled up in the ventricular cavity below began to crack, and similar dark red insects crawled out one after another. These insects are like calves, with very strong mouth parts. At the same time, they have thick feet, although their feet are not long and seem not suitable for climbing. But when they noticed the hummingbird detector suspended in the ventricle of this giant beast, they actually jumped one after another, suddenly jumped out of a height of dozens of meters, and easily captured many hummingbirds flying at low altitudes. These bugs were like fleas, jumping very high and having a great appetite. However, they obviously did not like the metal texture of the hummingbird detectors. They usually chewed them up with their mouthparts and discarded them. However, any hummingbird detector that appeared in front of them would be attacked. Nanling saw this and quickly controlled the remaining hummingbird detectors to rise to a higher altitude until they were more than 30 meters away from the bottom of the ventricle. It was really a ferocious bug. Nanling immediately informed the two people who had gone to explore the head of the giant beast of the situation here, and asked them to come back quickly to be on the safe side. However, he really overestimated Boss Fanny's sense of responsibility and underestimated her determination to explore the mystery. She replied, "I'll leave the outside you. I really found a passage to the giant beast's brain. It seems to be its ear canal." Nanling knew what was going on as soon as he heard it. He quickly sent a private message to Mo and asked, "Sister, why didn't you stop her?" Mo said helplessly, "She rushed in alone, and I'm chasing her now." "Very good, Boss Fanny can't even hold Mo back." Nanling was furious when he heard this. He said, "Next time, I will make you a chain that she can't burn. You'll be responsible for holding her when you go out together in the future." Good guy, he used the concept of baby walking artifact here. "Of course, it could also be a dog walking," Mo said hurriedly. "How is this possible?" Nanling said, "Well, it's impossible, then the only way is to surpass her in cultivation. As long as you can control her, many things will be much easier for us to do." Mo said, "Don't worry, I have some ideas about my thunder escape technique now. The previous insights have not been in vain. After I master the thunder escape technique, she can't run away." Nanling was relieved. The couple got more and more in tune, especially when discussing how to deal with Fanny. They expressed their opinions very tacitly. Fanny is really miserable as a boss and a lady. Her subordinates are always thinking about how to overthrow her. There shouldn't be any problem for Mo to chase Fanny, but just in case, Nanling still sent some combat robots, signal transfer beacons and hummingbird detectors to Mo. Li Ji will assist in the operation, which will help Mo and others explore the brain of the giant beast. Nanling has mobilized hundreds of combat robots to enter the mine tunnel to set up defense lines. According to the previous beacon, those dark red fat worms like fleas are jumping along the blood vessels of the giant beast. While Nanling is paying attention to the situation over there, he mobilizes more combat robots as follow-up echelons. His rigorous character makes him dare not be negligent, and he always makes multiple plans. Therefore, the weapons carried by these combat robots are also varied, all for experiments. Nanling made intensive arrangements here, and those worms, which he later named blood lice, finally crawled out from the depths of the giant beast fossil an hour later, and then crowded out of the blood vessel channel. Nanling looked quite nervous, and immediately ordered the robots to attack with the cheapest energy weapons available today. Unfortunately, the release of energy weapons could not cause much damage to these blood lice, as they seem to have inherited the strong resistance of the giant beast's muscles to energy attacks. Although some were killed, the efficiency was too low. Therefore, the first line of 100 robots was broken through at once, and they did not even last for 2 minutes. Among the robot fragments on the ground, Nanling calmly issued an order for the second echelon of robots to follow. The second echelon of robots used kinetic weapons. This time the performance was better than energy weapons, because kinetic weapons could better tear the bodies of these blood lice, and splash bloodlines on them. Nanling thought that the flames could still make some achievements, but then he found that these blood lice should be the evolved complete bodies mentioned in Governor Jioshan's research report. They were no longer ignited at a touch, but were extremely resistant to high temperatures. In this case, Nanling took advantage of the second line of defense to hold on, and he tried to attack with spiritual power. The fire wing flying sword beside him was suspended at the side, and then his fingers were interlaced and changed, and the fire wing flying sword released a series of powerful fire spells. Unfortunately, he did not release them with his own spiritual power, but used the fire wing flying sword to cast spells. In his eyes, the killing power of these fire spells was actually only 70%. If it were not for the amplification of the fire wing flying sword, 50% of the power would have been excellent. That's right, he just regarded this fire wing flying sword as a staff. I'm afraid Thongshi would never accept this setting. Chapter 258. Enlightenment of Form and Spirit. Nanling attacked with fire magic, but then found that the effect was not very good. The killing efficiency is indeed higher than that of kinetic weapons, but it is only higher. If you want to completely kill all the blood lice with fire magic, then even if you drain the spiritual power in the fire wing flying sword spirit furnace, you can't do it. After Nanling determined that the effect of fire spiritual power was not good, he immediately switched to wind spiritual power. He also switched weapons at the same time, and finally took out the spiritual spear pendulum that he had been hiding. To be honest, he felt that this spear could no longer meet his needs. It's not that his cultivation has surpassed the scope that this spear can carry, but that he is now more willing to use the equipment he made, so that he can give it enough emotion and refine it. But even so, the cooperation between the spiritual spear pendulum and his wind spiritual power was still beyond his expectations. When he controlled pendulum with his divine mind and threw it out like a javelin, the spiritual spear showed a very strong penetrating effect, piercing all the blood lice along the way, leaving blood holes. The dark red blood clots on the ground were extremely sticky. But there was not a trace of dirt on the collapse storm. Nanling hesitated. Is it really because this collapse storm brought a blessing to his spiritual power? He soon realized that it was not the case. Because in his heart, the collapse storm was just a carrier of spiritual power, a way for him to show his strength, but not the only way. So he did not take back the collapse storm, but after a simple thought, he cast a primary wind technique. Swift Wind Sharp Arrow. This is somewhat similar to the Flame Arrow, which can be regarded as a series of spells with different attributes. But the effect of this Swift Wind Sharp Arrow is completely different from the effect of the previous round of Flame technique output. Nanling's Wind Arrow easily taught the body of the blood louse, causing extremely efficient killing. Because of this move, Nanling did not even use his own spiritual power, but only quoted the spiritual power in the spirit furnace. But why is there such a clear difference? Is it just because the wind attribute is his main attribute? The answer is precisely presented in front of Nanling in the simplest way. Yes, because the wind attribute is his main attribute, his understanding and application of wind is the most profound. Swift Wind Sharp Arrow itself is far from being that strong. The lethality displayed by Nanling is not even in any reference document describing this spell. Because Nanling's own understanding of wind magic adds a unique concept to Swift Wind Sharp Arrow, just like a high-level spell. At this time, this concept is the tearing and penetration of wind. But he felt that there was no need to consume as much energy and effort as high-level spells. High-level wind magic has the concept of corresponding spiritual power because of the interweaving of scale and volume, but when his own understanding of spiritual power reaches or even exceeds that level, then he can make every attack of his own have the power of the concept corresponding to wind. This time, the Swift Wind Sharp Arrow is proof of this. He felt that he could even do better. So he reached out from behind and took out the Gauss rifle he had made for himself before. The Gauss rifle is perfect because it uses magnetic force to operate, and magnetic force cannot interfere with wind spiritual power. So Nanling simplified and miniaturized the elementary wind magic of Swift Wind Sharp Arrow and attached it to the bullet in the barrel of the Gauss rifle. This elementary wind spell directly became a blessing spell, and in terms of volume, it was even inferior to a basic wind spell. However, when the muzzle of this Gauss rifle trembled with a buzzing sound of electromagnetic waves, the concept of sharp tearing carried by the bullet shot out suddenly gave this spell the core of advanced wind spell. SHH with a crisp sound, the blood louse that was hit was torn into two halves by a mere bullet. This was a very amazing scene, even more effective than the complete version of the Swift Sharp Arrow spell just now. This was very abnormal and definitely exceeded Nanling's expectations. He became excited. What could be more worthy of his happiness than exploring the mysteries of the world like this? So he fired again. It was still a bullet with the minimalist version of the Swift Sharp Arrow spell attached, and it still had an amazing effect. Nanling frowned, feeling something, but he didn't grasp it. So he continued to cast spells and shoot. He gradually forgot what he was going to do, and focused on sensing the connection between the bullet and the wind spell. Slowly, the blood in front of him was all over the ground. After the blood lice were torn apart, a large amount of blood clots burst out. Now it looked like a bloody ground. However, the crazy thing was that the blood lice that surged up from behind were attracted by the blood and tried desperately to lick the blood clots on the ground. Nanling understood why there was no trace of blood in the blood supply system of the giant beast. It was probably eaten by these blood lice. And this blood lice was probably some kind of blood parasite in the body of the giant beast. It was fine when the giant beast was alive, but it was completely out of control when the giant beast died. Of course, these things were recalled later. At this time, he was completely immersed in his own perception. He discovered the mystery. That is, he understood the principle of both form and spirit. He should not consider bullets or wind magic alone, but should consider the two together. If wind magic gives bullets spirit, then bullets give wind magic the form to rely on. The combination of form and spirit is the key to the power of this blessing spell. Nanling suddenly understood. At this time, he already had the prototype of a new series of spells in his mind, and a wind spell paper titled Tearing Ammunition had been compiled using the intelligence core. In this paper, the concepts of form and spirit in the process of casting spells were analyzed using the evidence of this battle as an example. After doing all this, he simply chose to send it to the Cultivation Academy of Chugyu Academy for review. In his opinion, this kind of spell is just a small spell and is not worth paying too much attention to. His original intention of compiling the paper and sending it back was just to arouse discussion and see what others think about it. When he came to his senses and looked at the battlefield in front of him, he found that the bloodlice that the combat robots had difficulty dealing with had now completely turned into minced meat on the ground. Even if there were still some that were drilling out of the tunnel, their number was not large. Nanling thought about it and immediately asked the combat robot holding kinetic weapons to suppress it. At present, it was enough to suppress it. He also controlled the robot to collect samples of the flesh and blood on the ground and even the soil stained with blood clots. These bloodlice are amazing, each of them is like a big blood sac, and every death will leave a large amount of blood tissue on the spot. Nanling thinks that since they feed on the blood of giant beasts and even survive until now through an unknown hibernation mode, there may be something magical in this blood. But the only problem now is that it seems that because of this killing, he has completely become the focus of the world's heavenly dodo. The countless strange beasts around him are being inspired by something and rushing towards him in a mighty way. Chapter 259. The memory illusion in the beast head. Nanling temporarily suppressed his research experience on the body and spirit type of magic. At this time, the situation here has stabilized. What he cares about most is Fanny and Mo. One is the parent who provides food and clothing, and the other is his beloved wife and sister. Nothing must happen to them. Li Ji seemed to understand his worries. She said, "The beacon has been transferred, but the radio wave interference over there is getting stronger and stronger. We can only barely locate Mo's position, and have lost Fanny's position." Nanling was not worried about the safety of the two of them. After all, the giant beast has been dead for so long. He was just curious about what kind of situation they would encounter over there. At this time, Thongcha sent a message. "Nanlin, go find the young ladies, I will take care of you here." Li Ji also said, "Yes, the high-speed channel has been established. Next, leave all the work in outer space to me. You can handle the things on this planet." Nanling also nodded after hearing this. Gye Chen and the others will arrive in one day. It would be bad if he found that his daughter was missing when he arrived. Accompanied by a roaring explosion in the air, Thongcha landed in this colony. But he was shocked by the scene as soon as he landed. Around the colony, there was a blazing sea of fire, and countless creatures were wailing and turning into ashes. In the colony, a large amount of blood and dirt spread out from the No.3 mine, almost dyeing the soil within the colony red. What kind of hellish devil scene is this? Anyway, Thongcha felt quite shocked by this scene. Nanlin, who caused this situation, was calm about it. Thongcha said, "Don't you feel uncomfortable in this environment all day long?" Nanling smiled and said, "It's almost done now, and it's up to you to clean up the mess next. These pieces of blood and flesh are all good things. Collect them first, and then study them slowly after we are done with this period of time." Thongcha nodded. When he took over the control, he found that Nanling had actually set up the program framework a long time ago, and he didn't need to worry too much about this aspect. It must be said that he is now somewhat accustomed to Nanlin, Li Ji and Mo, who are considerate logistics operators, and they are really comprehensive. However, when Nanling left for a while, Hongxi almost died on the spot. Because when Nanling left, the smell of burnt and bloody flesh filled the air. What a stench! Hongxi quickly put on a mask and turned on the life support system. Then he realized that the colony had not had time to build an independent air circulation system. It was fine when Nanling was here just now. He had been controlling the airflow nearby with the wind control technique, so that the stench would spread and not condense. When he left, there was no one to control it, and the stench naturally rose. Hongxi almost died on the spot, and could only look at the direction where Nanling was going away with resentful eyes. This kind of thing should have been said earlier. The fire wings behind Nanling spread out and flew rapidly towards the head of the giant beast. According to the system positioning, he saw a hole on the side of the giant beast's head. This is the ear canal he found. This ear canal seems very spacious for tiny humans, and he flies very smoothly in it. However, Nanling felt very strange. This ear canal was so open. Why didn't other life forms come in? Oh, he saw some fossils scattered like plant roots, and some were dead bodies. Nanling was surprised. Is there any danger here? He began to check the surrounding air environment and found that although the air here was not fresh, it was definitely within the normal range. He did not find any harmful substances. There was no abnormal energy field either. After all, if there was, the previous detector would have found it. He continued to move forward carefully, and then found that the surrounding signals were seriously interfered. This interference made him understand that as long as he continued to move forward, he would inevitably lose contact with the outside world. This cognition made him quite uneasy, but he finally sent a message to Li Ji and made a bold attempt. He lowered his mask and exposed his head to the outside. Since all the detection devices on his body can determine that the outside is safe, then he must determine what the danger that cannot be detected by the detection devices when Li Ji can still help him. Of course, he did not expose himself directly to the outside air. What if there is a substance in the air that he does not understand? He used his flowing wind talent to isolate himself from the surroundings. Then, he suddenly sensed the real problem. In front of him, a hazy world suddenly appeared. It seemed that people were coming and going in this world, and it seemed that there were shadows passing by him. But this world was so fake to him that he knew at a glance that it was just an illusion. He was stunned, and then finally realized what the unknown danger here was. An illusion. The pure color helmet of faith had isolated him from the influence of the illusion to a large extent, so he didn't notice any clues. But Nanling was a little unsure. How could there be an illusion here? At the same time, he could feel that this illusion was trying to pull his consciousness into it little by little. Of course, this pulling force was still not enough, at least not enough for Nanling. His will was strong enough, and because he was used to playing the game of repeated pulling with the wisdom core, his consciousness resistance was almost full. Nanling shook his head and continued to move forward in the direction of this illusion. Then he began to realize what was going on. This was actually a huge illusion similar to the ocean of collective consciousness in the atmosphere outside. When he carefully explored this illusion with his mind, he found that he was surrounded by dense streams of memory. This was a vast ocean of memories gathered by countless creatures. It did not exist in the form of any electromagnetic waves, nor did it have any thinking ability. In Nanling's view, it was as if someone had used these memories to encode them, making this illusion like a huge storage device, accommodating all these memory streams. Nanling was only surprised, and at the same time he became worried. Because he already knew how those creatures outside died, their consciousness was hooked away by this illusion. There were no more corpses on this road, because there was no intelligent life on this planet that could walk to this section. He continued to move forward and began to debug his intelligence core and pure color faith. He made sure that his intelligence core was not affected and his pure color faith was also intact, and then he continued to move forward. And as a rigorous person, he set a 5-minute automatic return countdown for himself while moving forward. Once 5 minutes are up, the intelligence core will take over his pure color faith and take him back the same way. Of course, he could reset the countdown at any time when he was awake, and once his consciousness was attracted by the illusion, the wisdom core and pure faith would automatically take him away from here when the countdown was up. This was the safest plan he could think of. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 260. The event that will lead to the silencing of witnesses. Nanling was fully prepared and started to move forward in this ear canal tunnel. The deeper he went, the more he could feel the power of the illusion around him, trying to pull his consciousness into the illusion. Of course, this illusion has not yet succeeded. It is far from strong enough for Nanling. He continued to move forward. According to his perception, he should be extremely deep now. But Fanny and Mo still did not show any traces, and they were still missing. At this moment, he couldn't help but take the risk of performing a wind spell. Before, in order to prevent anything from being triggered, he had been restraining himself from doing anything that might cause waves, but now he was becoming more and more uneasy and could only try carefully under restraint. Gaseous perception, this is a wind spell that has almost become his instinct. He used the wind to carry his divine consciousness and explored in this long tunnel full of illusions. This made him feel that the force of his consciousness being pulled was greatly enhanced. Sure enough, using divine consciousness in this environment is a suicidal act, but fortunately he had anticipated it and was cautious enough. He used his own will to resist the drag of his will very tenaciously. To be honest, he was almost dragged away. Fortunately, he finally fed back the information he needed. The gaseous perception brought back some movements in front. He heard the heartbeats and breathing of two people, as well as some radio waves from electronic devices. Nanling hurriedly accelerated forward, because it was not far away from him. The radio waves came from the hummingbird detectors sent in from the ground. They fell to the ground out of control and kept sending signals. And the sound of heartbeats and breathing, he resisted the increasingly real illusion around him, or the drag of consciousness in the illusion, and finally came to the two bodies lying on the ground. They had taken off their helmets, and it was unknown what mentality they had in doing so. Because Nanling had already discovered that wearing a helmet could have a certain effect of isolating illusions. And now, their helmets fell not far away. Nanling began to wonder if they took them off themselves after being dragged into the illusion by the illusion. And from the postures of the two people falling, some clues can be seen. That is, Fanny fell forward, while Mo was lying on Fanny's body. It was obvious that Fanny was dragged away by the illusion first, and Mo struggled toward her and saw Fanny, so he wanted to take her out. As a result, when she tried to take Fanny away, she couldn't hold on and was taken away by the illusion. Nanling could still hold on. He found that the ability to resist this illusion had nothing to do with cultivation and the strength of the soul, but was related to whether one's will was firm. So the two Jimden girls couldn't hold on, but he, a little cultivator of the 8th level of foundation building, could still hold on. He picked up the two people's visors and helmets from the side, and put them on them respectively. Then he dragged the two people's bodies out. Nanling didn't think there was anything wrong at first, but when he walked for 10 minutes, he found that the two Jimden girls had no signs of waking up, and he realized something was wrong. At this time, the illusion didn't have much killing power on him, and theoretically it should be enough for the two to escape from the illusion. But they were still in a coma and showed no signs of waking up. Nanling's expression became serious. He realized that the consciousness of the two people might still remain in this illusion. If he didn't find their consciousness back, he might only bring back two bodies. Nanling was really anxious this time. He cherished the people in front of him and didn't want to lose them. So he took off his helmet again without thinking much, and then directly released his divine consciousness to try to connect with the illusion here. Ming Mo repeatedly warned him not to use divine consciousness casually, as it was a very dangerous thing. But Nanling was determined to pull back Mo's consciousness at this time. When his divine consciousness took the initiative to meet this illusion, his consciousness was suddenly pulled into an extremely large illusion world. This world constantly interfered with his will when it pulled him in, making him want to completely forget himself and integrate into this world. But for some reason, he was very awake. Although the forces that dragged his consciousness down were strong and constant, he could always stay awake as long as he persisted in resisting. And to maintain the confrontation, this is too familiar to him, he often plays this kind of confrontation with his own intelligence core. Although the two are not the same thing, it feels similar to him. In this case, Nanling maintained his consciousness and was reborn again. It is called rebirth because he became a baby again and was held in someone's arms. This is nothing, the only problem is why the person who held him as a baby in his arms looks so familiar. Is this Boss Fanny? Mo, look, this is our child, but why doesn't he cry? I heard that if he doesn't cry, something bad will happen. Then Nanling changed his arms, and Mo's face was imprinted in his eyes. He was shocked by this. He is the son of two beauties. Wait, he doesn't seem to have a little juju. Good guy, really good guy. Nanling broke free from this illusion at the time. He looked at the two beauties he was holding, and his heart was confused for a while. Then he suddenly realized something. He was not a human in that illusion, but some kind of human-like higher life that he had never seen before. Through his memories at this time, he could find that this kind of advanced life seemed to have no gender distinction. As long as two individuals fall in love with each other, they can exchange genetic information to reproduce the next generation. What an advanced reproduction method. Nanling calmed down and decided to enter this illusion again to take a look. His divine consciousness probed again, and the same situation as before appeared again, and then he fell into an embrace again. Mo, this is our second child. I hope he won't die unlike the previous one. Nanling. ... He was speechless. I didn't expect that the world in the illusion could have such a setting. And he only left for a moment, right? They already had their second child. But soon, he found out why the two of them were addicted to it and couldn't wake up, because this illusion composed of memory convergence was too real, so real that he almost thought he was really reborn. He had to remind himself of his origins at all times and fight against the dragging this illusion to maintain his wakefulness. Then the next moment, what he faced almost made him lose control and break his defense. That is what every newborn has to face, feeding. God knows why such details are shown so clearly in this illusion. Anyway, he almost fell into the gentle embrace of Mo, who was full of maternal charm. Then he almost died prematurely in Fanny's arms again. That's right, they actually took turns to feed him, so that he almost lost the show again. After that, Nanling began to worry about one thing. If he woke them up, would they remember these things? If they remembered, Nanling shuddered all over, thinking that he would be killed to silence him. Chapter 261 People affected by illusions. Nanling finally dragged the two women back. He didn't even have time to study what secrets existed in this illusion. Because if he stayed any longer, Nanling might lose his integrity. It's okay for his own wife, but how can he eat the boss's rice bowl? This is too much. So he quickly found a way, which was to gather a powerful divine thought and drag the two people's consciousness back together. Although they were in an illusion woven by a huge memory group, their bodies were still there in space. And when Nanling brought the two people's consciousness back, they returned to their bodies in a very close place. Nanling breathed a sigh of relief, and then began to struggle with how to get away with it. There was not much time for him to hesitate, he had to make a decision. So in a hurry, he made an unexpected decision. That is, after the consciousness returned to his body, he immediately injected almost all of his divine thoughts into the spirit furnace of his fire-wing flying sword as a warming. This drained his mental power in an instant, making him feel dizzy as if he would faint at any time. At this time, Fanny and Mo both woke up. When they woke up, they saw Nanling dragging them outside with difficulty, while he was already exhausted. It was obvious that he was trying to save them while resisting the illusion. Anyway, after a brief moment of unconsciousness, the two of them felt touched. Then they would start together to take Nanling out first. And Nanling was really unlucky this time. Because his spiritual consciousness was too depleted, he was finally spotted by the heavenly dealer that regarded him as an enemy, and then he was given another wave of hellish illusions. So the remnants of the creatures on King Shuani that he killed took advantage of this opportunity to attack his consciousness, causing him to suffer a very terrible mental trauma. This kind of thing was originally nothing, but the question was who made himself harm. What he worried about before came true, and he really became a sacrifice again, unlucky. He felt as if his consciousness was dragged into hell. Countless dead spirits appeared around him, trying to devour his body. Originally, he would not have taken such a thing seriously, but who made him weak now? The external reaction was that his body began to weaken rapidly, and he seemed to be dying at any time. Mo was anxious, and Fanny was also anxious. No, he can't hold on any longer, we have to save him. Fanny said anxiously. Mo gritted his teeth and said, he is trying to save us. We must find a way to save him. By the way, let's go back to Zhuoxia immediately and use the healing treatment. Fanny said, his problem is mental. The healing treatment will only restore his body, right? Mo said, don't forget the theory he invented himself. Physical strength can be converted into mental strength. What he lacks now is mental strength. We can strengthen it by supplementing the body. And this planet is too unfriendly to him. Taking him away from here will be more conducive to treatment. Fanny took a deep breath and said, that makes sense. Let's go back to Zhuoxia. There is a healing cabin there. Then she and Mo took Nanling and flew into the sky. They were worried and entrusted everything to Thongxi and Li Ji to take care of. Now, they put all their thoughts on Nanling, fearing that he would have an accident. During the flight, the silent Fanny suddenly muttered, this state of panic is like the feeling when our eldest son died. Mo's eyes widened under the mask at the time, and then she said nonchalantly, that's an illusion, you have to get out of it. Fanny said, I know, but it's really real. Speaking of which, why do I feel my chest swelling? Is it milk swelling? She felt incredible. Mo analyzed. It should be that the illusion affects your consciousness, and your consciousness affects your body's hormone secretion. It will be fine after a while. If you are worried, you can adjust immediately by doing a recovery treatment with Xiaonan. Fanny said, I know, I will go back to the room to do it after we settle Xiaonan. Damn, my chest is wet. Mo's expression was a little tangled. She and Mo hurriedly stripped Nanling naked and put her in the recuperation cabin. Watching the nutrient solution completely soaking Nanling, she said, the two children we saw in the illusion are actually Xiaonan, right? Fanny had already walked to the door, but suddenly stopped and said without looking back, who else could it be? Who else could come between us except him? Mo said, then don't mention it when he wakes up, so he doesn't feel embarrassed. Fanny said, okay, I won't tell anyone about this. You don't have to worry that I will snatch him from you. Mo was slightly stunned, then sighed and said, Fanny, nothing has happened between him and me yet. He respects me more than anyone else, so I just want to respect him too. Fanny said lightly, Mo, I respect you very much too, so I don't want to have any disputes with you. Let me emphasize again, he's yours. If someone snatches him from you, I will help you beat him up. If he is unfaithful to you, I will also help you beat him up. I will always stand by you, good sister. Mo was quite moved when she heard this, and she said, I know, but what I mean is that I respect him and will not deliberately push him into anyone's arms. But if he wants to be with you, I will welcome it. I just want to tell you this, after all, we are good sisters. Fanny was stunned for a moment, then quickly turned her head to look at Mo and immediately turned her head away. She said, don't let your imagination run wild, I'm not that kind of person. Then she ran away quickly. She still had to solve the problem of her breast engorgement. Mo sighed secretly, retracted her gaze and stared at Nanling in a trance. At the same time, she said, this is not your fault, blame me for not being able to let go of Fanny after all. But don't have any psychological burden, just let everything go naturally. After saying all this, she turned around and walked out of the medical room. She also had to deal with the abnormality of her body. After all, Fanny's cultivation was higher than hers, and the illusion still affected her body's hormone balance, let alone her. When the two left, Nanling was lying alone in the convalescent cabin and opened his eyes speechlessly. Who would tell him what to do next? This illusion seemed to have opened a Pandora's box in his life, making him feel at a loss. He knew the situation of Fanny and Mo at this time. Because Fanny was not only the object of Mo's loyalty, but also Mo's best friend and sister since childhood, and even a community of destiny. If they were originally a man and a woman, they would be a natural pair, just like the situation in the previous illusion. But they are both women, then, they seem to have two choices. Either they remain single or simply become sisters. Or they choose the same man that they can accept. The current situation is that Nanling seems to have become the man that they can accept. As for the close blood relationship between Nanling and Fanny, this is actually not a thing in this era. However, Nanling was embarrassed here. He was just full of love for Mo in his heart, and he really had no illusions about Boss Fanny. Although the rice bowl was really soft, fragrant, and full, damn, he was also affected by the illusion. Chapter 262. Devoted to the Tao. Nanling was embarrassed. He hated himself for waking up so early. He felt that the situation was a little dangerous, because he had agreed to devote himself to the Tao and abstain from sex. Why was there such a precarious problem now? Well, he was being hypocritical. Would Boss Fanny like him? He didn't know, and he was too lazy to think about it. He only knew that he had to lick her. After all, the boss was his bread and butter. As for his wife's sister, she was even more precious. So the conclusion was that there was no need for any changes, just the same as before. Nanling came to a conclusion that made him speechless. But this might be the best result for everyone. This made Nanling put aside these worries for the time being, and then seriously restored his state. He knew that every time he went out with Fanny to do something, he would always be involved in the trouble. This accidental attack by the World's Will made him very dangerous. Fortunately, Mo took the initiative to take him away from King Xuanyu, which prevented him from being attacked again. So his consciousness woke up at the time. At this time, in the convalescent cabin, the rich nutrient solution infused him with nutrients and replenished his body's loss. The fire of his essence was burning fiercely, and the key was used as a transfer between reality and illusion, constantly transforming his physical strength into spiritual strength with the momentum of a bridge. He was recovering quickly. He even found that because of the weak confrontation with the heavenly will of King Xuanyu, his mind became obviously stronger and more condensed. In fact, with the strength of his mind at this time, he was no less than most Jimdan cultivators. While he was recovering, he unexpectedly received a communication from the Chugyu Academy. It was from Guanming, the dean of his Shizhen Academy and his mentor in the academy. Guanming. Nanlin, I read your paper Tearing Ammunition and I have to say that it was very inspiring. But unfortunately, because it involves many concepts, which are high-end cognitions that only appear in the content of advanced spells, we cannot confirm some parts. Or do you need more evidence? Nanling understood. This ammunition was a highly effective and practical spell of form and spirit in one for him, but for ordinary people it was just a specious thing that was not even a basic spell. He replied. Okay, Professor, I will analyze it from another angle. Then he discussed his discovery with the old professor again. In fact, it was mainly the old professor who told him some rules. Recognition was undoubtedly a magical skill for him, but it was not universal. So what Nanling had to do next was to study universality. This was another good topic for him. Although this was actually a bit of a waste of time, Nanling was really optimistic about the prospects of this kind of spell. It was all money. For example, his Worn Wind Finger technique, after being defined as a primary spell and selling like crazy in the early stage, was quickly redefined and changed to a medium-level special spell, and the copyright price soared directly to the level of a high-level spell. This was quite annoying for him, because the copyright price was increased, but fewer people bought it. This greatly affected Nanling's income, and paying off his wife's debt seemed a long way off. But he actually understood the reason why the GU high-level officials did this. This was equivalent to gun control, which was to limit the threat from the civilians. But in the military, as long as it was the violent agency under the GU, basically everyone had bought the copyright when this spell was still at the price of elementary spells. In fact, this was a great infringement on Nanling's interests. After all, if the GU high-level officials chose to buy the copyright for the violent agency after raising the price, it would be showing goodwill and giving benefits to Nanling. But now, it seemed like they were using their power to take advantage of Nanling. Nanling didn't feel much about this. After all, he was almost raised by Mo to the point that he had no concept of money. He just set up a memorandum in the intelligence corps to record this matter clearly. To be honest, he found that the more he came into contact with the high-level officials of these big forces, the more he could feel their unbearableness, but it was easier to deal with potential middle-level personnel like Yu Chen. As Nanling improved himself, of course, he was also led by Boss Fan. He was able to break away from his original level and start to get in touch with people in the middle and upper middle levels. When he was at the bottom, he felt that although the people in this world lived a hard life, the upward path was always there. As long as he found the right direction and worked hard, he could still change his fate. But as he improved his level, he slowly discovered the traps set by those top people. Or in other words, under the system that was originally good, there were huge loopholes because of those people's willfulness or greed. He saw that even people like Yu Chen were so weak in front of the real authority in the upper echelons of the Gi family. Fortunately, there is still an upward path that has always been there. That is cultivation. A Jindan cultivator can become the backbone of any force, and if he can become a Yunying, he can be a guest of honor of any force. 20 hours later, Nanling climbed out of the convalescent cabin. He stretched his muscles and bones, and heard a crisp click. At this time, a cyborg with a delicate face and a three-point resemblance to him came out of the door. It was Li Ji's psychic cyborg. Bring you some clothes. These young ladies are so impatient. She put the clothes in front of Nanling. Nanling didn't feel embarrassed standing naked in front of Li Ji. Anyway, Li Ji didn't have any tools. When he was changing clothes, Li Ji leaned against the door and said, Master Gi Chen is here and is waiting for you. The three of you are all recuperating, which makes him very worried. Nanling asked curiously, then why didn't he send me a message? Li Ji said, I stopped him because I was worried about disturbing your rest. Nanling nodded. It was indeed reassuring to have Li Ji watching him. He went back to his room and took a shower. When he was leaving the room, he sent a message to Gi Chen. Uncle Gi, you are here. Gi Chen. I have been here for a while. What's going on with you? It can be seen that he is very anxious. Nanling said. I encountered an illusion made up of ancient memories. We will tell you the details in person. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already arrived at the bridge of the Zhuoxia. At the conference table on the bridge, Gi Chensing and Bai Shenzing were waiting with some unpleasant expressions. Nanling stepped forward and said, Uncle and Aunt, have you read our exploration data? Bai Shen nodded without saying anything, while Gi Chen said, you are too risky. I thought it would be very safe with you and Mo, but I didn't expect. Nanling smiled bitterly when he heard this. But he didn't say anything. Although it was obviously the result of Boss Fan's own willfulness, who made him get paid. As a good employee, it is natural to bear some blame at this time. Not long after, Fanny and Mo came together. They held each other's hands and looked very close. Nanling felt that maybe they were the best, and he was just an accident. And if he was not mistaken, it seemed that the rice bowls of these two ladies were both one size larger than before. Chapter 263 King Shuan Civilization. I don't know if it's an illusion, they have become closer and more beautiful. It seems that some experiences in the illusion have made Fanny and Mo lose some of their childishness and have a lot of maturity. Anyway, Nanling was a little stunned. Fanny was also a little stunned, or embarrassed, when she saw Yu Chen and Bai Shen coming in front of them. After all, the things she did were really too bad. Anyway, Yu Chen was still angry and didn't want to talk to her. Bai Shen was open-minded. She didn't care about the awkward father and daughter and began to ask the three young people about their experiences on King Xuan'er. It was mainly about the things in the illusion. It was able to pull the will of the Jindan cultivators into the illusion, which showed how powerful this illusion was. At this time, Mo entered a serious state to explain. She said, "This is the memory of all intelligent life of an era of civilization on this planet. There we can see many wonders of that civilization, and even experience a life that has completely integrated into the King Xuan civilization." Nanling understood. Mo really had a clear memory of everything that happened in the illusion. This was a truly unique experience for them, and he wanted to try it out as well. Bai Shen understood what she said, and she said, "No wonder you all seem to have more signs of aging, this is the reason." She was such a perceptive woman, and she could obviously see the changes in the temperament of Fanny and Mo. Nanling, on the other hand, quickly turned his thoughts elsewhere. He frowned and said, "Sister Mo, you said that it was the gathering of the memories of the entire King Xuan civilization. Then can you see why they perished?" Before Mo could say anything, Fanny snorted disdainfully and said, "What else can it be? It's just like most of the civilizations deduced by the great scientists of the Academy of Sciences. They were killed by themselves." Bai Shen asked, "Have you seen the demise of this civilization?" Mo said, "That's not the case. I just saw many clues. During our growth in the fantasy world, there have always been two opposing factions. These two factions adhere to their own philosophies and are doing different suicidal things." Fanny also became interested. She took over and said, "One of them is that they are going to develop an ultimate potion that can make the life forms of the entire civilization evolve to an incredible level all at once." Mo said meaningfully, "The other faction wants to develop a way to connect everyone's hearts and unite the people of the entire civilization." Nanling went to the porthole of the bridge and looked down. He looked at the planet of King Xuan'er and was filled with emotion. So he said, "It sounds like this mind network is very similar to the ocean of collective consciousness on this planet." Mo said, "In fact, now that I think about it, the final potion may be the source of the active factor that is everywhere on this planet. We found that this active factor is full of traces of human intervention." Nanling nodded, and everyone agreed. This is a conjecture that is easy to associate, but Yu Chen, who has been silent, raised a key point. "So, why do they do this?" When Fanny heard her father speak, she immediately said in a rather flattering voice, "What else can we do? With stronger strength, power, and resources, the greed of those senior executives will never subside." She expressed her dissatisfaction with the senior executives of the Ge family. Yu Chen shook his head and said, "We can have many reasons to be dissatisfied, but we can't be so superficial when considering problems. The Ge family certainly has many problems, but those senior executives do have the resources to do something." Fanny asked, "Oh? What could it be?" Yu Chen sighed and said, "Humanity's basic technology has not been improved for a long time." Fanny was at a loss. Yu Chen said again, "In fact, there has never been a real immortal among humans." This time, Nanling and Mo also became serious. Yu Chen continued, "The areas that humans can explore have not been expanded for a long time." The three young people didn't dare to breathe at this time. They all heard a heavy meaning in Yu Chen's voice. After Yu Chen finished sighing 3 times, Bai Shen continued, "You have all learned about the history of the ancient struggle between humans and the Dark Locusts, right? To be honest, all the directions of human progress were blocked by the Dark Locusts, and the ancestors could only seek a way out by madly rolling inward. So the body modification school and the cultivation school rose rapidly in that era, which led to the current prosperity. And the problem we are facing now is actually more serious than that year. Because what we faced back then was only a siege in space, but now we are facing the severance of the road ahead." Nanling's throat was a little dry, his eyes flickered and he was about to say something. Obviously he had something to say but didn't dare to speak. Seeing this, Yu Chen smiled and said, "You are not an outsider, just say whatever you want to say." The attitude of treating one of his own actually made Nanling feel at a loss. The old father seemed to have foreseen something a long time ago. Looking back now, it seems that he has been particularly caring and kind to Nanling from the beginning. Nanling originally thought that Yu Chen was such a good guy, but after he discovered the special relationship between Fanny and Mo, now recalling these things, it seems that they are caring in another sense. However, this kind of thing cannot be laid out and explained. Nanling can only pretend not to know, and then said seriously, "Uncle, you said that humans have never had a real immortal. What's the matter?" Chen said, "I didn't expect that you were most concerned about this issue. Well, it doesn't hurt to talk to you. In fact, we humans should not have reached the end of the road of cultivation. The so-called immortals actually refer to the realm above the nascent soul. Above the nascent soul, they are already immortal and the dragon is invisible, so those beings are honored by later generations as immortals, or immortal kings." Nanling felt a sense of enlightenment after hearing this. It seems that the immortal king and the fairy princess are not real immortals, but a title, a respect for these powerful people by later generations. He asked. Then, he seemed hesitant. Mo seemed to understand what he was thinking and asked for him. "Then, what about the oracle?" Fanny realized it belatedly. Chen said, "The so-called digital gods seem to be extremely powerful, but in fact they also have their weaknesses. That is, they must rely on humans to exist. The more powerful human civilization is and the more powerful the network is, the stronger they will be. In fact, the so-called digital gods are simply the followers of those great immortals in the early days. In terms of life level and realm, they are indeed higher than nascent soul cultivators, but not much higher." Chen's eyes revealed a sense of pride. Although he has not yet reached the nascent soul realm, he seems to no longer be afraid of the existence of oracles. Chapter 264. Humanity's Dilemma. Chen took the time to explain to the three little ones the current situation of cultivators in a human world. He said, "In fact, I only need to tell you a few percentages, and you will find out how difficult the path of cultivation is. Take the ancient domain for example. About 30% of the registered people have taken the path of cultivation. Most of these 30% can reach the foundation building stage, but they will only be in the foundation building stage for the rest of their lives. Among them, only about 1 in 100,000 can become a Jindan cultivator, and among Jindan cultivators, only about 1 in 1,000 can achieve Yuanying." He paused for a moment to let everyone think about it. Mo had already reacted and said, "Our ancient domain has a total population of nearly 10 billion. So, that means there are 3 billion cultivators, 30,000 Jindan cultivators, and 30 Yuanying cultivators. It is unexpected that the population of the ancient domain is only 10 billion, but considering the current low fertility desire of humans, and considering that these people are registered people and do not count the real lower class people who are several times more than that and do not even have the qualifications to register, it is understandable." Chen shook his head and said, "To be precise, there are only 23 nascent soul cultivators in the ancient domain, which are extremely scarce." Nanling took a deep breath and said, no wonder as long as Uncle advances to the nascent soul stage, you can directly enter the upper level. But since the nascent soul is so rare, then aren't great cultivators above the nascent soul even rarer? Since Uncle's branch has passed through the ancient immortal lord, why is it still a side branch?" Chen shook his head and did not answer directly, but said meaningfully, "Since you already know so many things and results, why can't you reverse the reasons?" Nanling was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly realized. The ancient immortal lord is still a side branch, so there can only be another great cultivator who is equally or even stronger in the Gi family's main lineage. Therefore, with such a great cultivator in charge, the status of the Gi family's main lineage is unshakable. Nanling finally let out a long sigh and said, "It seems like it was right for us to come out." Chen nodded and said, "Actually, if I want to pursue that ancient immortal monarch, I also want to find a backer from the same branch. But after listening to your experiences, I also understand that he might have a big problem, so I won't force it." Fanny, on the other hand, hugged her arms in front of her to hold up her bigger, peerless rice bowl, and said with a look of disapproval, "It's better to rely on yourself than on others. Since we're already out, let's just make our own way. I don't believe we have to rely on those from the clan's direct lineage." She really still holds a grudge, and has completely brought her disgust for concubine Yu King into this. Baisheng suddenly glanced at Fan and I and said, "You are not young anymore. It's time to share some of the pressure with your father. The direct lineage of the clan is not good in some ways, but you can't completely deny it and completely break away from it. You can only," she wanted to continue, but Chen suddenly stretched out his hand to stop her and said, "Okay, I'm still alive as your father, so let me worry about this kind of thing." Even though Fan and I did very excessive things to him, Chen, the old father, still doted on his daughter very much. He chose to forgive that wonderful mistake and continue to protect his daughter from wind and rain. In fact, both Nanling and Mo had heard the implication of Baisheng's words. they could not completely break away from the direct lineage of the clan, but on the contrary, they had to show obedience and respect to a certain extent, and they had to accept the benefits they gave them happily, but they just didn't rely on them too much. It's difficult to grasp the degree of this, but fortunately, those senior executives are also smart people, knowing that compared to confrontation, winning them over is the right way. At this time they got back to the topic, and Yu Chen said, "The King Shuan civilization you saw in that illusion actually looks very similar to the predicament we are facing now. If I'm right, they should be taking the extreme biotechnology route, right?" Mo recalled and nodded. Yu Chen said, "Sure enough, it is because of their specialization that they were able to discover the bottleneck so quickly. And the two factions you mentioned, whether it is the final potion or the mind center, are actually efforts made to break through this bottleneck. And from your description, these two efforts actually have a high possibility of success, but it's a pity that they both failed. This planet is extremely valuable, especially this illusion woven by memories," Yu Chen said, and suddenly realized something and asked, "Can you learn knowledge in the illusion?" Fanny and Mo were stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes, we still remember a lot, but that is completely different from the knowledge system we know." Mo pondered and said, "In any case, this is a huge fortune, and the master may even use this as a feature to try to run a biological preparation company in the future." Baishan nodded approvingly and said, "This is a good idea. We really should have a pillar industry of our own and not just rely on the gift of the clan's direct lineage. After all, everyone chooses to follow you, Yu Chen, not the Gi family." Nanling would not participate in this topic. He felt that he could even go out. But the people present didn't seem to really treat him as an outsider, and they talked directly. Fanny immediately expressed her opinion. "I know, now I will go there again, and I must learn all the knowledge there." Yu Chen shook his head and said, "It's better to be cautious. Let me try first, at least I am sure I can stay awake in that illusion." Fanny said unconvinced, "Xiaonan can also stay awake, otherwise how could he save me and Mo?" Yu Chen looked at Nanling in surprise, because he didn't know that it was Nanling who saved Fanny. This immediately reminded him that he had complained and blamed this young man before, and he immediately felt bad. Seeing this, Nanling hurriedly said, "It's nothing, I was actually very reluctant at the time." He had to say that he was reluctant, otherwise what happened in the illusion at the time would not be easy to explain. If he was reluctant, then at least the fact that the two women were sucked from their food bowls in the illusion could be considered excusable. But on the other hand, if he acted very relaxed, well, he couldn't imagine the end. Baishan glared at Fanny and said, "See? If Xiaonan hadn't risked his life to save you, you might have gotten into trouble. Wait for your father to go check it out. Since he said he was sure, even if you want to go, you have to wait until he comes back." But Fanny still refused. She was born strong-willed, so how could she back down from such a thing? Even if Mo tried to persuade her, it would be useless, and no one knew whether she would agree on the surface but actually sneak away again. In this situation, Mo subconsciously looked at Nanling for help. What's more, Yu Chen actually looked at him expectantly. Did he really treat him as the reins of Boss Fanny? Nanling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After thinking for a while, he said, "Boss Fanny, I have a more difficult project here that I want your and Sister Mo to help me with. Can you help me?" As soon as the soft words came out, Fanny really hesitated. She seemed to be no longer so insistent, and asked, "Are you in trouble again?" This made it sound as if Nanling had a lot of troubles, but it was obviously all caused by you, Gi Fanny. Nanling kept complaining in his heart, but on the surface he said distressedly, "That's it, I have some ideas and wrote a paper, but Professor Gi Wanming thinks that my arguments are insufficient and not universal, and asked me to revise it." Fanny saw the paper, then rubbed her chin and muttered, "Interesting, it can be like this. Wait, I'm not unfamiliar with the concept of fire, maybe I can also develop a flame ammunition according to it." Mo Hangsao glanced at Nanlin, then echoed, "Well, I think I can also develop a thunder ammunition spell, but this requires careful thinking and experimentation." Fanny said very agreeably, "Yes, we need to try it carefully." She felt her inspiration surging. Then he said to Yu Chen and Baishan in a hurry, "Okay, I'll wait for Dad first, we have to get busy now." Then he held Nanling in one hand and Mo in the other, dragged her out. Yu Chen shook his head helplessly. Baishan teased, "In the end, your daughter was completely subdued by this kid, aren't you upset?" Yu Chen said unhappily, "What's there to be upset about? I'm really relieved." Baishan shook his head helplessly again and said nothing more. Chapter 265 Research Project. What about flame ammunition, thunder ammunition and the like? The two girls quickly developed their own concept-based blessing spells according to Nanling's ideas. It's just that they had never tried to extract the concepts from advanced spells and use them simply. It was precisely because of this that it seemed like the door to a new world was opened for the two girls. And how to popularize this spell became their thinking direction. Fanny was very generous. She directly chose, "Why don't we try the blessing ray? When the time comes, we can burn it on the weapon and bless the ammunition." Mo also completed all the credits in the weapon-making academy. She shook her head and said, "The loss is too great. Although it can make very advanced weapons, the high material cost is contrary to the universalization that Xiaonan expects." Fanny nodded and said, Oh, I have to listen to Xiaonan." She smiled and looked at Nanlin, as if she had a lot to say, but in the end, she just hid it under her smiling eyes. Nanling pretended not to see the talking eyes and said, "I just think that high-level spells use large-scale spiritual arrays and spiritual power to inspire concepts, so why can't we start directly from the shape to shape the concept? What I've thought of now is to start from the shape of the gun, the shape of the bullet and so on." Mo nodded and pondered. "I see, using the shape of an object to give the concept of spiritual power is indeed a way we have never considered before, and we don't know if it will work." Fanny didn't say anything more. She said, "You'll know if you try it." As soon as she finished speaking, she had begun to use the intelligence core to design a new gun for herself. She was quick, and Nanling smiled when he saw her. He also reminded her, "We can try with the best materials first." Fanny asked curiously, "Why? Isn't that a waste?" Nanling said, "No, I just found that the better the spiritual materials, the easier it is to have unique properties in some aspects, so it may be easier to build concepts. That means our ideas are more likely to succeed. And when the ideas are verified, then we can look for ways to replace them, and we don't even have to look for them." This is the truth he has recently realized. Why is it difficult for people at the bottom to really succeed? It is because the resources they have are not enough to support them to conduct high-cost trial and error. Although Nanling wants to invent something with universal applicability, this invention must be useful to him after all. If it is useless to him, what is the point of inventing it? The three of them each had ideas in their respective fields, and then they began to try them on the Zhuoxia. The Zhuoxia has accumulated many precious spiritual materials, which are enough to support their various wastes. Just like Nanlin, after trying 9 combinations, he finally found a design that can form a perfect twin spiritual power flow by splicing 3 spiritual materials. Because of the environment in which they were born, spiritual materials will have some special spiritual power bias. Just like Nanling's current model, one of its 3 materials has a sharp spiritual power, one has a strong tearing feeling, and the other is neutral. These 3 combined together gave Nanling a sharp and tearing concept, which even seemed to have one more concept than his simple tearing ammunition. Of course, these concepts have not been stimulated yet. He loaded the bullets and tried shooting at the shooting range. First, he shot with ordinary bullets. In this mode, his bullets were just the lethality of normal kinetic weapons, without any enhancement. Then he guided the spiritual power to bless. He did not use tearing ammunition, but just wanted to see what effect this gun would have under the guidance of spiritual power. However, something happened to him that surprised him. Just the simple spiritual power guidance actually showed some conceptual power. The power of the round bead-shaped kinetic bullet was greatly enhanced, and even caused some tearing damage to the target. Nanling was quite satisfied with the result, but his attempt was not over yet. He changed the magazine again. This magazine was different from the previous one because it was filled with special bullets that looked like daggers. This dagger was very small, only as long as a little finger, and the magazine was fully loaded with only 14 bullets. But the effect this time was extraordinary. Nanling injected a weak wind spirit power into the bullets, and then even before it was activated, Nanling felt a strong sense of sharpness and tearing. He knew that he had succeeded, which meant that the form can also contain the spirit. This discovery made him very happy, so he named the large kinetic rifle in his hand Shenfeng 0, which means extremely sharp. Of course, the suffix 0 was learned from his mother, which means to verify the model. The success of Shenfeng 0 made Nanling very happy, and then he quickly made Shenfeng 1. However, although it is the first official gun model, it is actually the product of Nanling's first replacement and redesign of various materials. It is definitely not as good as the Shenfeng 0 in terms of materials, but it only uses simple spiritual patterns to replace the spirituality that the spiritual material should have. Therefore, it can realize the function of concept blessing, and the power of ordinary attacks seems to be similar, but the upper limit of blessing cannot be compared with Shenfeng Zero. The special sword-shaped bullet was named Wind Fan by Nanling. For that time being, Wind Fan has not found a substitute because it is a very extreme shape. Then Nanling developed Shenfeng II. This gun has completely lost the simple and mysterious charm of Shenfeng Zero in appearance design, but is full of aggressiveness, and is another design that highlights the shape. In contrast, it reduces the design of the spiritual array on the basis of Shenfei, which is still the idea of using shape to supplement spirit. Fortunately, he still succeeded. The cost of Shenfeng II was reduced to half of Shenfei, and the power was not much different, but the upper limit was lower. Nanling's test speed was so fast, in fact, thanks to Mo's familiarity with various experimental processes and her assistance. The three of them can be said to have shared their knowledge and developed the concept of firearms with three attributes of wind, fire and thunder. Fanny's weapon has the ignition feature, that is, the concept of burning. All the targets hit will burn quickly. Mo's weapon has the concept of thunder shock. This effect is only reflected in the stronger frontal destructive power on dead targets, but if it hits a living thing, it will cause it to stagnate instantly. Then Nanling began to look for inspiration from these successful verifications, trying to figure out a spell that can be used universally. Mo found out and asked with a smile, "Haven't you found a solution? Use form to supplement spirit." Since the concept of magic is not something that ordinary people can grasp, give them weapons that can carry and give rise to concepts. Isn't this series of weapons you made perfect? Use magic to enhance spiritual power, and use the shape of weapons to give concepts. Nanling was awakened by this and found that he had really ignored the problem in this regard. But then, he frowned and thought of a question and said, "We can register copyrights for these discoveries of ours and sell them for a good price, right?" Mo said affirmatively, "Of course, whether it is up-air ammunition, thunder ammunition, flame ammunition, or the matching weapon drawings, we can register copyrights." Nanling asked, "Then can I register somewhere else?" Mo did not find it strange to hear this. She immediately sent a bunch of messages to Nanling and said, "After comparing many places, I found that the Star Federation may be the best place to publish. Because they attach more importance to the rights of copyright owners, and because there is no dominant force in the entire Federation, everyone also attaches great importance to the compliance with these rules." Nanling looked at her unexpectedly and said, "Sister, have you been keeping an eye on these for me?" Mo smiled, then touched his face gently with some heartache and said, "You're wronged before, but it's a pity that I can't help you. I can only help you prepare more for these things." Nanling was very moved. He said, "Sister Mo has done enough for me. At least it allows me to always know what I should do. This is very important." Fanny rolled her eyes and said, "How about we just set up an arms company in the Star Federation?" After she finished speaking, no one else reacted, but she actually got excited first. Did she come up with another interesting idea? Chapter 266 New company established. The three of them were clearly in the ancient domain, but they had already thought about registering a company in the Star Federation. To be frank, Nanling felt that she couldn't afford to offend those people, so she chose to avoid them. The network interface of the Star Federation was easy to find, and they quickly found a place, and then submitted the blessing spell, weapon blueprint, and bullet blueprint as a set for review. However, there was no news for a while, because they were amateurs to the Star Federation after all, and the review work would continue for some time. Li Ji said, "I have just browsed the network of the Star Federation and found that they encourage this kind of thing, so different spells and designs are submitted almost every day. I looked at it and found that you still have a set of system reviews. It will take at least 3 days." The three of them didn't think anything of it, so Fanna changed the subject and said, "Let's look at opening a company there." Li Ji said, "I have checked it for you a long time ago. There is no problem with opening a company, but a company in the Star Federation must have a core business to be approved. Of course, if the patents and copyrights of the three of you are all approved, you can use these 3 series of copyrights as a framework. The only question is, what model will this company operate in the future? Will it charge licensing fees? Or will it directly participate in production and sales? This is a good question, because production and sales can definitely maximize profits, but that means they have to intervene in management, which is too troublesome. So they studied it and thought it would be better to go the licensing route. Well, it's mainly because they're lazy and don't want to manage that kind of mess." Fanna decided on the name of the company, Funmolen. The three of them each held 30% of the shares, and the remaining 10% was to hire Leegi as their senior partner to help operate. 50% of the company's income was used as one of the operating funds for Zhuoxiao, and the rest was used for their personal distribution. Nanling said with emotion, "I have my own industry now." Mo glanced at him and said, "How much do you plan to put into our family fund?" Nanling. ... He immediately stated, "Okay, let Sister Mo take care of the dividends. Anyway, I'm not short of money now." Indeed, anyone who can owe 10 million yuan without any savings can already be a mess. At this time, Fana suddenly said with a smile, "Well, then my share of the dividends will also be get by you, Mo. Anyway, I'm not short of money." This person really does not lack money. But the meaning of this action is very memorable. Does she also want to put this money into the family fund of Nanling and Mo? However, things involving Fanny were destined to be forgotten soon after the initial enthusiasm. After leaving everything to Leegi to operate, she came to the ground again with great interest, took out the gun she and Nanling made together, and prepared to use the creatures on this planet for practical verification. Her absolute flame zero was simply transformed into a flamethrower, setting off a sea of fire on this planet. Mo's Silver Rope Zero also showed extraordinary performance. Its electric shock paralysis effect was too strong, and it could be called an excellent control attack. Nanling's Divine Blade Zero was needless to say, and the bloodiest scenes were all created by him. The data of the three weapons were collected quickly, and then the actual combat evaluation of the first and second weapons was carried out. In addition to the Absolute Flame series of weapons that performed exceptionally well on this planet, the weapons of the Divine Blade and Silver Rope series both performed well. Silver Rope is a controlled weapon, and it is actually a bit of a waste to use it against ordinary little monsters, because such a bullet may only be able to freeze and injure the little monsters. However, when used with Zhuoyan and Shenfeng to attack powerful targets, the auxiliary effect is maximized. The Shenfeng series is synonymous with attack power and destructive power. It is best at making the scene bloody and bloody. It has a good performance in both attacking and ordinary attacks. What is surprising is that Fana's Zhuoyan series of weapons, although its burning effect has a strong ability to sustain damage, it is more of a weakening and suppression when dealing with powerful life individuals. In other words, the three series of weapons developed by the three people are actually Nanling's main attack, while Fana and Mo's have become auxiliary. Nanling was quite surprised by this. He just felt that things are unpredictable. He originally planned to be a good auxiliary. It's okay. The process of developing these weapons is also the process of thoroughly practicing the unity of form and spirit. In this process, the three people have greatly improved their understanding of spiritual power, which is a good improvement for them. Anyway, as far as Nanling is concerned, he now understands how important a good concept carrier is to the improvement of spells. At the same time, at this time, he also has a higher level of understanding of his own spells and combat skills. To put it another way, Nanling is constantly improving his normal attack strength. It's not that he doesn't want to develop his unique skill, but he always feels that it's not worth it to put his energy on it. The strength of normal attack actually fully reflects his current understanding of wind skills, spiritual power and practice, which is a more basic thing. If he wants a unique skill, wouldn't it be easy for him to directly exchange for a high-level wind skill to use? In fact, he did try to exchange, but unfortunately, high-level spells are strategic resources for all forces. After he left the wind domain, it was difficult to encounter good high-level wind skills. On the contrary, the Wind and Cloud Thunder he learned in Chugyu Academy before was only a medium-level spell, but it had the potential to break through to a high-level wind skill. This is a wind skill that can convert spiritual power attributes. If it is well developed, it can even become the key for Nanling to open his control over Thunder spiritual power. According to this idea, Nanling could actually upgrade Wind and Clouds to the category of advanced wind magic, as long as he gave it a strong enough concept. With his mind made up, he tried it on the spot. He held a whirlwind in each hand, and then threw one of them forward. Wind and Clouds. The two whirlwinds connected the sky and the earth at once, and then quickly intersected, rubbed, and tore, producing terrifying thunder that radiated in all directions. This was an extremely powerful spell attack, which directly mixed the surrounding clouds into a mess. The tearing and friction concepts that Nanling gave to it made this wind magic lack some flavor. Hey, if I can understand some concepts of thunder spirit power and integrate them into it, this spell will be perfect. Now there is only the concept of wind spirit power, which is only half the power for him. In short, continue to experiment and ruin this planet. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 267. Yuning is expected. Nanling's research came to a standstill, because he knew that he should not continue to expand and extend to thunder and even fire spiritual power without thoroughly studying wind spiritual power. If he told others, people would not believe it. It was extremely difficult for others to have a sense of enlightenment, but what about Nanling? His problem was that he faced too many choices. Just like fire control, because of this series of research, he had reached the level of LV7 without realizing it. God has pity, he really didn't study it carefully, just because the talent in his blood allowed him to go up naturally. And the thunder control technique is even more excessive. This is not his blood talent, right? But his thunder control technique has already reached the level of LV5. It doesn't seem to be as fast as fire control, but the problem is that these are all improvements brought by his own understanding, and there is no affinity brought by the gifted blood. In fact, if Nanling had come into contact with thunder spiritual power earlier, he would definitely choose thunder spiritual power resolutely. Because it represents his own perception, not the benefits from that blood. This is his unique hypocrisy. But now that the basic base is wind spiritual power, he can only go on this path. Fortunately, with wind as the foundation, he can develop the two attributes of fire and thunder. The main reason is that the bosses Mo and Fanny are good at these two attributes, and he can easily get started through observation and communication. In this way, time passed day by day, and they stayed in Qingshuan for more than half a month. In the past half month, they have been very fulfilling every day, at least Nanling thinks so, and he has improved every day. However, such a fulfilling and peaceful day soon came to an end, because Gu Chen, who had disappeared for 17 days, finally came back. He flew out of the giant beast's head, turned into a rainbow of blazing flames, and returned to the colony located at the back of the giant beast's neck. "Uncle, are you out of retreat?" Nanling immediately stepped forward to greet him. Fanny had long forgotten what she had done, and ran over to act coquettishly with a smile. After some greetings, Gu Chen looked at Fanny up and down, and then said in surprise, "I didn't expect that you would have a breakthrough after I had been in seclusion for more than 10 days. Fanny said with a smile. "That's right, the three of us have been seriously discussing cultivation, and now I have reached the second level of Jindan." Fanny actually made a further step in the Jindan stage. Isn't this too fast? But it is precisely because of this that it shows how outstanding her talent is. Don't forget that she has started over again. In comparison, most cultivation is still at the first level of Jindan, but it is also close to the peak and may break through at any time. Therefore, she also said with emotion, "I have gained a lot recently, and I feel that the realm breakthrough can be a natural result." As she said that, she glanced at Nanling again. Nanling is still at the 8th level of foundation building at this time. There is no way, he is now just a water grinding kung fu, which is a process of accumulating spiritual power. It is necessary to reach the Jindan stage to be able to bring about an improvement with some insights. And he feels that with his own insights, the first 3 levels of the Jindan stage should be no pressure. Seeing this, Gu Chen nodded with satisfaction and said, "I'm also very happy to see that you have all made progress." At this time, Nanling looked at the subtle mysterious aura on Gu Chen, and the temperament that seemed completely different from before. He couldn't help asking, "Uncle Gu, have you also made a breakthrough?" Gu Chen nodded and said, "That illusion, I hope everyone can keep it a secret. It is amazing. It is also a true treasure house left to us by that ancient civilization." Even Baishan, who came here after hearing the noise, showed a puzzled expression. She asked directly, "Boss, just say it, there are no outsiders here." Nanling looked around guiltily and found that there were only him, Fanny, Mo, Baishan and Gu Chen here. Was he really not an outsider? Gu Chen smiled and nodded at him, then said, "I experienced 9 lives and 9 deaths in that illusion, that is, 9 different lives. And in fact, at the end of my first life, I had already broken through the original realm and reached the peak state of the 10th level of the Golden Core. The 8 lives that followed brought me different feelings, making me feel the sadness of the Qingshuan civilization that had no way forward, and the wisdom gained from the 9 lives." Fanny was a little confused after hearing this, and she said, "Dad, it is certainly a good thing that you can break through the realm, but is this illusion really so important?" Nanling had already thought of something. He suddenly looked up at Gu Chen. His eyes had already revealed amazement and envy towards Gu Chen. Gitchen nodded slightly to him, then looked at his stupid daughter and said, "Let me tell you this, it doesn't matter if you can be more willful next time, your dad already has enough ability to protect you. The 10th level of the golden core, the nascent soul can be expected. This is Gitchen's current state." And Baisheng also showed a look of surprise for this, and everyone seemed very happy. Only Nanling frowned and looked thoughtful after being startled. Gitchen looked at Nanling's expression with satisfaction and said, "It seems that you have thought about it further." Nanling nodded and said, "Yes, I think we should keep a low profile. Boss Fanny, we should prepare for our next trip to the Star Federation, and Uncle Gi should break through as quickly as possible but try to conceal his cultivation. Survive, this is Nanling's only idea, the longer the better." Gitchen pointed at Nanling, showed a comforting smile and said, "Okay, breaking through the cultivation as quickly as possible is for self-protection, and hiding the cultivation as much as possible is also for self-protection. You're a smart person. You know that although the Gi family's main bloodline is eager for me to succeed, it doesn't want me to be too successful." Nanling shook his head and said, "There is no way. After all, no one knows whether the Gi family ancestor standing behind the main bloodline is tolerant. We don't know him at all, and judging from the practices of the main bloodliner, it is difficult for me to feel at ease." Gitchen nodded and said, "I see, you can be regarded as our little military advisor in this way." Then he talked about the illusion again. He said, "That illusion can help us condense the wisdom of the previous life and eventually become the firewood for transcendence. But it is not good to experience those too early. If you cannot wake up in the illusion, then you may end with the end of a round of illusions. So my suggestion is that you should not come here before the 8th level of Jindan, and you can try it after the 8th level of Jindan." Then she looked at Baisheng and said, "Shinja, you're only at the 5th level of the golden core, you have to work harder. These youngsters are so fierce, don't let them surpass you." Baisheng took a deep breath, then nodded seriously and said, "I understand. Although I am dull, I should be able to reach the 8th level of the golden core if I practice step by step. The 5th level of the golden core is already a very powerful cultivation outside, but in this small group, especially in front of the 3 little ones, it seems a little bit inferior." Then, Gitchen began to introduce to everyone the ancient times he knew in the illusion, chapter 268 Knowledge of Ancient Civilizations. After coming out of the illusion, Gitchen focused on one thing, which was to input all the biotechnology of the King Shuan civilization that he had obtained from the illusion into the system of the Vuxia through human brain input. Fanny was still a little disgusted. She said, "Why do you keep these with me?" She felt that she would not need them at all. Gitchen said calmly, "Because you are my daughter, if there is a backup of all my knowledge, it can only be left here. If you're interested in these things, you can learn some of them yourself. If you don't feel interested, it doesn't matter if you leave them to your children and descendants. This is a strange thing. Who does this you refer to?" Nanling looked at Mo and Fanny, both of whom showed a hint of shame. His eyes suddenly widened, and then he showed an extremely surprised expression. He remembered the experience of being born as the child of these 2 aunts in the illusion. Speaking of it, according to the technology of this era, it seems that it is not impossible for 2 women to give birth to offspring together. Gitchen noticed Nanling's surprised expression with a kind of dazed expression at the time, and said unhappily, "Don't let your imagination run wild." It was probably because Nanling's divergent thinking just now was too vivid and his brainwave activity was too intense, so that a master like Gitchen could capture his thinking picture at a glance. The picture was really bright and beautiful, which made him speechless. Nanling quickly retracted his divergent thinking and stood up obediently and stopped thinking wildly. Li Ji and Mo were puzzled. Their cultivation was not yet at the level where they could capture strong divergent thinking. Gitchen looked at Nanling and felt an inexplicable stomachache. He felt that none of these 3 little guys were worry-free, so he should just let them go. Then he said, "After all, you have a trustworthy digital life here. I believe Miss Li Ji can protect this knowledge from being obtained by outsiders." At this time, Li Ji responded gently, "Yes, Master Gitchen, I will take good care of this precious knowledge. In addition, I suggest that you can establish a biological preparation company on this planet. After hundreds of millions of years of iteration and degradation, the active factors on this planet no longer have the manic medicinal properties of the original formula. The accumulation of time has made this originally failed formula become a safe enhancer." Fanna said in disbelief, "Don't forget that Duoshan turned the residents of the entire colony into monsters. Is that safe?" Li Ji said calmly, Shan's research method is too rough, and after we obtain the relevant scientific and technological information of the King Shuan civilization, I can propose 11 improvement plans. Shan also took a quick look at the information, nodded and said, "That's right, maybe having such a life engineering company will make it more convenient for us to do some things. Besides, didn't we plan to do this?" Chen nodded and said, "Then, this matter is handed over to you, Shan. I'm afraid I can't show up often." Shan showed a look of understanding. She said, "Gather all the old brothers and give them some equity." Chen nodded and said, "Of course, the old brothers who follow me can't suffer losses." After that, he thought for a while and looked at Nanling and the other three and said, "These kids will take 30%. After all, this place was discovered by them. Just think of it as me using these shares to buy this planet from their pioneering team." Chen said with a smile. Biological agents, especially those involving body strengthening or even life extension, can definitely be sold at a sky-high price. And Chen has obtained all the life sciences of King Shuan civilization. It is conceivable how profitable this company will be in the future. But it was for this reason that Nanling could not help but give a suggestion. "I think that if we want to sell products, we must not just take out the good stuff. It is best to have a simplified version that is extremely degraded. It is best to make it not much different from the biological drugs produced by ordinary biological drug companies, but with better performance in some aspects, and then launch 1 or 2 new products every year that will make people's eyes shine." Chen listened carefully, and then muttered seriously, "Xiaonan, don't you think you have the potential to be an Annie?" Nanling. ... He just felt that he was subjected to deep malice. Mo next to him covered his mouth and chuckled, and said with a puff, "So this is what it feels like to see people being nagging." Fanna looked like she had no desire to live. She felt that having a nanny was enough. Could it be that Nanling would also be changed by Mo? Fortunately, Chen was also joking. Aunt Baishan beside him patted her husband in annoyance and said, "Xiaonan is also a kind reminder, and what he said makes sense. The biotechnology we have mastered is definitely extraordinary, and we must not let those people in the main line of the clan get interested in it." Nanling also hurriedly changed the subject in embarrassment. "Speaking of which, Uncle Gu, you have experienced 9 lifetimes in that illusion. What kind of trouble did the King Shuan civilization encounter back then?" Chen sighed, "Their troubles are different from ours. They specialize in biotechnology. Not only are they incredibly strengthened, they can also artificially cultivate powerful genetic beasts for control. It's just that their control methods are not sophisticated. What we can do by implanting a chip, the King Shuan civilization must rely on its own powerful mental power to do it. Yes, because of the characteristics of civilization, they are born with strong mental power, and as their bodies are strengthened, their mental power is also constantly increasing. And everything they do is done with biotechnology. Genetic beast vehicles, biologically modulated houses, and various war beasts are emerging in an endless stream. I was thinking, if they can overcome their crisis and break through that limitation, they might even be able to use their biotechnology to create a biological spaceship." Nanling was stunned for a moment, and his brain reacted very quickly. Could the giant beast lying on the giant beast plateau be a biological spaceship? Chen said, "That does mean it, but it's a pity that they didn't break through that step after all." Nanling asked, "Then what is trapping them?" Before Chen answered, Mo said thoughtfully, "If I'm right, it should be the conflict between the overly powerful physical instincts and self-awareness, right?" Chen nodded and said, "Their problem is that their increasingly powerful biological instincts make them gradually lose their reason. You may not believe it, the original intention of the ultimate potion was to enhance the mental strength of living beings. But this potion got out of control. It enhanced the signal transmission of every brain nerve and even made every nerve cell with information have its own thinking. That scene was really a riot of demons. And the attempt of the spiritual center also failed. They did gather the spirits of many people, but the people whose spirits were connected got great spiritual satisfaction from each other, and then immersed themselves in the spiritual world all day long and no longer moved in the material world." Fanna said in surprise, "Isn't this just an online community?" Chen said, "That's different from our online community. It's a network that allows everyone to share memories and experiences." Nanling said, "Collective consciousness. Speaking of which, it seems that the final potion makes countless brain nerves in a brain independent, while the spiritual center treats each individual as a brain nerve to form a collective brain." Fanna said unhappily, "As a result, one can only become a madman, and the other is simply all idiots." Chen smiled and said, "That's it." In the end, the last wise man among them built the giant beast that never came to life, making it the last carrier of King Shu'an civilization, hoping that one day this civilization will have successors to reopen this secret treasure. Having said that, everything that happened on King Shu'an was finally revealed to Nanling. He sighed and said, "If I reach the 8th level of Jindan, I must come and experience the life here. These memories are really precious treasures. I don't know how long they can last." Mo glanced at him slightly, then quietly sent him a message. "This time, you have to come in with us. Don't get assigned a strange identity because of the missed opportunity." Nanling took a breath of the time and had no idea how to respond. He felt that he was being teased, but had no evidence. Chapter 269. Changes of Galaxy Fairy. The Juxia finally set off again, and this time the departure time was actually earlier than the 3 winning teams from the Galaxy Fairy. They will all arrive at the Star Federation after a year of flying. The only difference is that the 3 teams from the Ancient Domain are going to compete, while the Juxia is going to join in the fun and make some trouble. The next 2 months are a long flight time, and they will come out for a short rest after 2 months in the hyperspace. Of course, these 2 months are not wasted for everyone on the Juxia. For example, in the hyperspace active group that has not been used for a long time, Fanny has already shouted, "Log in, let's try the Galaxy Fairy preview edition that Fox introduced to me." Fanny, who was only interested in the Galaxy Fairy for a short time, had lost interest in it before, but she can be interested again at any time. Nanling never thought that the broken ship Galaxy Fairy could still arouse Fanny's interest. He had even uninstalled the game, Li Ji said considerately. "There is a data backup on the Juxia. I will install it back for you." Damn it, how did Li Ji become a gentle big sister? Where did that rogue old aunt who loves to tell dirty jokes and tease people go? Nanling just felt that some things could not be undone after all, but he still liked it. Mo hesitated for a moment and asked, "Don't you want to call Thongship? He is now at the 9th level of Foundation building. Theoretically, he has a chance to wake up in the hyperspace." A moment later, Thongship joined the group, but he looked a little confused and had no idea what was going on. Fanny didn't give him time to wake up, and immediately said, "Come on, log in, let's start the game." It was very much like Nanling's roommate in college in his previous life. The thing he loved to do most was to call friends and brothers to log in and start a game, and he would not hesitate to fail a course for this. In the game preparation space, Nanling also saw Li Ji's image again. But unexpectedly, Li Ji's image of this time was actually the appearance of her psychic body. It seemed that she was very satisfied with this appearance. Fanny said, "Wait, we don't have a network in the hyperspace, so we can only choose human machine. I will give you this new activation code first." This was given by Fuss, the operating director of Galaxy Fairy, as an apology to Fanny. However, when they entered this new activation code, everyone was shocked by the change of this game. The name of this Galaxy Fairy has changed to the Plague of the Underworld Locusts. And the opponent of this human machine has also changed from the original human fleet to the army of Underworld Locusts. This is interesting. The production company behind this Galaxy Fairy is a group of people with ideas. Li Ji said, "These contents are hidden in the core code of the original game. They have completed the development of this game a long time ago, but they need a special activation code to activate it. In addition, the realism of this game has been further improved." Fanny asked in surprise, "What does this mean?" Li Ji said, "If it was only a simulation under limited data before, then now it can be achieved in real time." She paused, and said, "In other words, this game can now put all your thinking abilities into it, and you can also give full play to your abilities in it." Fanny became excited all of a sudden, and she said, "If that's the case, this is too fun, right?" She was really interested. Mo groaned and said, "No, if that's the case, the size of this game can't be so small." Li Ji nodded and said, "That's true, but this game is so magical. After you activated it with the new activation code, it only expanded by 10% in size. That is to say, it already has many basic elements. This seemingly ordinary game actually contains very high-end coding technology. No, it should be said to be top-level coding technology." When Nanling heard this, an idea popped out of his mouth. Digital God. Li Ji nodded when she heard it. This is the only possibility. This is a game coded by the Digital God himself. This discovery made everyone no longer in a hurry to enter the game, and they began to talk in this preparation space. Even Thongship, who had begun to adapt to this kind of hyperspace consciousness communication, made a statement. "It sounds like the Xingcan pioneers are playing a big game." Mo nodded in agreement. This seems to be preparing for the resurgence of the nether locusts in the future. Now I am suddenly a little worried. Have the nether locusts in Miss Fenyi's place been really eliminated? Fanna said indifferently. Anyway, Fenyi doesn't have this problem. Recently, her Chunyuan 06 has been in ruins. She is relying on those original lower-level district people and some middle-level district backbones to rebuild the space station. I heard that she did a good job and has been praised by the upper level of Fenyu many times. It seems that Fanny and Miss Fenyi still communicate with each other on a regular basis. Nanling didn't care much about the artificially adjusted Nether Locust King. He just murmured, I don't know who's the digital god who participated in the design is. If it is our old acquaintance Oracle, then this matter will be interesting. Everyone felt heavy in their hearts and couldn't speak after hearing this. Because according to the Oracle, being the strongest prophet of human civilization, doesn't that mean that humans will eventually face the plague of locusts again? And this galaxy fairy was developed to deal with the plague of locusts. Fanny is not a person who likes heavy things. After she was a little depressed, she gathered her strength and said, okay, it's useless to say that now. Let's go into the game and see. Everyone nodded. So the 5 people entered the game. As a result, when they entered the game, they found that everything was wrong. They were still in that tense asteroid belt, and the 5 of them appeared here at the same time. There was no resource allocation at the beginning, only this familiar landing module was located on this asteroid. On the other side of the asteroid where their landing module was located, they found a magical portal full of ancient buildings of alien civilizations, but they didn't know what it was for. Similarly, they also knew their mission, which was to survive the plague of locusts. As for how long they could survive, I don't know, just hold on anyway. Everyone was very calm about this, and simply regarded it as a brainless task in a game. They began to receive information from the logging module and then study what to do next. In any case, reconnaissance must be the top priority, which can quickly increase their familiarity with the game. The ace scout Liji was sent out at the time, and her task was to detect the movements of the Hades locust. Others began to consider how to expand the production capacity development base as quickly as possible. To be honest, although they have 5 generals at the initial stage of development, it is better to equip them with more production machinery. With 5 generals, too much computing power is lost. Chapter 270 New Battlefield. Countless nether locusts gathered in front of the interstellar fortress that Zooxia's team had just built. They were so huge and terrifying that it was hard to imagine that there were nether locusts flying freely in the void of the universe. These nether locusts had a fierce battle with the combat team that Nanling had urgently assembled. Unfortunately, the combat machinery was powerless to attack the nether locusts and was torn apart not long after. Then the base that everyone had built with great difficulty was destroyed in an instant, which seemed full of helplessness. A game ended just like that, crushing, withering and rotten. Except for the scout battle led by Liji at the beginning, which seemed to be going back and forth, these nether locusts soon expanded to an astonishing number at an exaggerated speed. Anyway, everyone's experience was very bad in the end, and they were defeated cleanly. However, what they didn't expect was that after this big defeat, they returned to the preparation room and found a new module. That is the preparation space. This preparation space is very magical. After entering, they can make various weapons and equipment according to their own wishes, and can also summon various nether locusts for testing at any time. Nanling sighed and said, okay, I understand that this game is really set up for the plague of locusts. The Xingcan pioneers may have some incredible information in their hands, and this virtual digital space that is almost the same as the real world is definitely the masterpiece of digital gods. Fanna said a little embarrassedly, if you say that, was my attitude towards Director Fox too bad before? It seems that they are all a group of respectable people. Indeed, this is a group of people who stand at the top of mankind and try to save the crisis when they see it. Nanling inexplicably thought of the Qingshuan civilization, the ancient civilization that was divided into 2 factions but tried their own methods. Although there are differences between the two, there is no doubt that mankind is facing the same problem. Mo said calmly, how can we consider the affairs of those bigwigs? They are all guys who can see 1,000 years in a glance. Maybe the crisis they foresee now will not happen until the next 10,000 years. Let's not care so much about this kind of thing. Maybe nothing will happen when we die of old age. This makes sense. After all, if human life is placed in the span of the universe and the galaxy, it is really extremely short. Fanny was also relaxed after hearing this, and then said, okay, let's play this game well, and it can be regarded as a contribution to our civilization. She waved her hand freely and was about to start another round. However, Nanling hurriedly stopped her and said, "Wait a minute, since there is a preparation space here, why don't we make full preparations before starting another round?" Mo also nodded and said, "This complete form of the Nether Locust is too terrible. The energy weapons we generally know about can only cause limited damage to them. We need more attempts and verifications." Fanny also stopped after hearing this. The previous show of power really made her sick. She said, "Okay, let's see if we can find the weaknesses of these Nether Locusts." As soon as the voice fell, she summoned a pot-bellied Nether Locust. This Nether Locust looks like a giant beetle, but it floats in the air and can spit out highly corrosive plasma from its mouth, which can cause considerable damage to the energy shield of human civilization. The Nether Locust, which has never been seen before, was used as a target at this time, and various weapons were tried. However, the experimental results were very disappointing. Ordinary weapons really had little killing power against the Nether Locust. Fanny was a little annoyed. She casually picked up a flaming sword and attacked the Nether Locust. The flowing flames stabbed into the body of the Nether Locust plasma beetle and then exploded. No matter how powerful this thing is, it can't withstand the killing power of Fanny's Jindan level. Nanling blinked and said, "Speaking of which, we actually took the wrong route at the beginning. If it's so easy to find a way to target the Nether Locust, then how could it become a terrifying existence that wiped out all civilizations in the Milky Way in the last era? To deal with the Nether Locust, what we should do is to find a higher level of power. In fact, our ancestors have always told us the correct answer." Mo also summoned a Nether Locust, and then stretched out his hand to the Nether Locust and casually pointed a thunder spear. The spear suddenly passed through the body and then detonated the plasma in the Nether Locust. Boom. This was a massive magnetic storm. But soon the damage caused by the magnetic storm turned into a pile of codes scattered around. Obviously, in this digital space, this kind of aftermath could not really cause any harm. Mo said, "I see. In this game, we need to add more personal force." That was indeed the case. When they found that the mechanical troops had been defeated, they did not put up any more ineffective resistance, because the information they had been receiving in this era was that no matter how powerful an individual is, he cannot change the overall battlefield. But in this current situation, it seems that this idea can be changed. Fanny couldn't wait to start another game. To be honest, Nanling actually had many ideas that he wanted to bring out at the same time, but seeing that the boss was so excited, he didn't say anything to spoil the fun. In his mind, this was just a game. Even if it was given more connotations, it was just a game. So the second game started again, and this time they persisted for a lot longer. On the battlefield, Fanny could be seen as a proud fire phoenix, soaring freely in the dark starry sky. You can also see that Mo's whole body is covered by a powerful magnetic field and blooms with stunning aura, showing off her charm on the battlefield. Nanling was a little inconspicuous among them. He could only use spells to bless kinetic weapons to kill from a distance. It's not that he doesn't dare to fight, but this is the highest killing efficiency. It's just that the efficiency of single attack is too low after all, especially compared with Jindan girls like Fanny and Mo. The difference is not a little bit. And when the two Jindan girls exhausted their own spiritual power and the spiritual furnace, the battlefield inevitably tilted towards failure. Nanling could only release a large-scale wind and cloud thunder to watch the fun, and then entered the game happily. The 5 people met again in the preparation room, thinking together what else can be improved next. Fanny was the first to sigh and say, "It's really fun, but it's really tiring. We can't just rely on ourselves. If we can't build up a conventional force that can effectively kill the Hell Locusts, we won't have a chance." After venting her anger, reason once again took over Fanny's IQ. As for this problem, Nanling had already been thinking about it. He said, "Then let's try our concept weapons." Mo frowned and said, "Our concept weapons are indeed a way out, but they require spiritual power to guide them to be effective. But those robots," Nanling smiled and said, "then develop a group blessing technique, wouldn't that solve the problem? What he is best at is to create according to needs." Chapter 271, Turning a game problem into an academic problem. Tear the barrage. Nanling stood in front of a group of robots and waved his hand casually, and then his blessing spell had already landed on the group of robots. The next moment, the robot array raised its guns in unison and attacked the Dark Locust array in front. Amidst the screams, the bullets fired by the robot army array quickly tore and split the Dark Locust group. Even if there were strong individuals who could resist one or two, they would soon be torn apart under multiple attacks. Nanling was satisfied with his operation this time. Relying on the robot army array, he used the spiritual power consumption of a medium spell to play a stronger killing effect than a high-level spell. And the consumption of a high-level spell is more than 3 times higher than that of a medium spell. The improvement in combat endurance is absolutely huge, and the key is that it also has an extraordinary improvement in his personal strength. On the other hand, Fanny and Mo also performed well. The 3 of them guarded one side and led the army A to successfully stop the advance of the Dark Locusts. In this case, the construction of the rear base was completely handed over to Liji to complete. When Liji became a digital life, she was the strongest producer. Hongshi's responsibility was to arrange defenses. This was what he was good at, and because he was completely specialized in this area, many times his arrangements were even more sophisticated than Liji's. He was always able to create some defensive details, which was something that Liji, who was in charge of the overall situation, could not do. However, even so, they still lost after holding on for a while. This time it was not because the 3 frontliner combatants could not hold on, but because the base's production capacity could not keep up with the opponent's development. And the reason for the production capacity not keeping up, Liji had already operated the equipment she controlled to the extreme, but her computing power as a digital life was only less than 10%. This was the reason for their failure this time. We must find a way to use Sister Liji's computing power, this is the key. Nanling put forward his own views, and soon gained the approval of everyone. But the question is, how to use Liji's computing power as much as possible. Everyone brainstormed, and Fanny immediately gave a very intuitive answer from her perspective. We were too idle at the beginning. That's true, because she was always idle at the beginning, so she naturally noticed this problem. Thongsha said. But at the beginning, there are only 2 medium-sized heavy fusion reactors on one landing module. I'm afraid the production capacity will not be able to be increased no matter how fast we try. Mo looked forward with a cold gaze. There were countless data streams flowing in front of her. She was obviously thinking about how to solve this problem. Nanling was also doing this. He reminded him, in the previous round, I noticed that not far from our starting position was another asteroid with a large iron core. If we can mine the iron ore on that asteroid from the beginning, then the landing module only needs to produce some advanced materials. Mo immediately responded and said, if this is the premise, we can build a large or super large heavy fusion reactor in the shortest time, and our production capacity will be increased to a sufficient level in a short time. Then the question is, how can we do this? In the beginning, I'm afraid we don't have the ability to mine across asteroids. Nanling's expression has completely relaxed. He said, indeed, our initial landing module does not have this ability, but this does not mean that Jindan cultivators like Sister Mo and Boss Fanny can't do it. The ants are not stupid. They understood Nanling's meaning after thinking carefully, and immediately tried it in this preparation space. An iron asteroid appeared in front of everyone. Mo tried it first. She released a terrifying magnetic field around her, shaking the entire asteroid. But then she gave up and said, no, my magnetic field control is not fine enough, and I can't directly separate the iron in this situation. If I can use Lingyu here, it would be great. With Lingyu amplification, I might be able to give it a try. Fanny immediately said, just look at me. My King Yuan armor itself can amplify the power of my flames. Wait until I melt it completely and then try to separate the iron. As she spoke, wings made of flames appeared behind her, and then she rushed towards the asteroid. Bang! With a muffled sound, she crashed into it. Then, a scorching red light continued to shine from the asteroid, and then the entire celestial body began to slowly emit red light. Soon, the entire asteroid was melted into a pool of magma suspended in the void. Then Mo immediately activated her electromagnetic control ability again. This time she succeeded. Countless liquid metals in the magma were pulled out, and even stratified in the magnetic field according to different metal components. Perfect, this ability to purify and separate is too perfect. Fanny's smelting and Mo's purification are a perfect match. At this time, Mo said again, it's just that the resources have been collected, and now they are brought back to the landing module for production. Nanling shook his head and said, if that's all, you are just miners, and it's still a waste. And the initial production capacity of the landing module can't handle so many materials at all. He paused for a moment and then asked, Sister Mo, can you use a magnetic field to shape these metal fluids? Mo tried it, then sighed helplessly and said, maybe I can work in this direction in the future, but I can't rely on magnetic fields now. She paused again and said, By the way, I can use my divine thoughts, but with the strength of my divine thoughts, I can't shape so much metal melt at once. Nanling said. Then let's do it together. So the three of them reshaped the metal melts together, turning them into the shape of parts. Fan aside while busy. It would be great if we had a water-attributed companion like Aunt Bai. After all, the properties of redstone are the same as mine. What should I do with quenching now? Redstone was disliked again. Nanling thought for a moment, then said, I'll try to use the cold wind technique. If it doesn't work, I'll develop a watermark finger gesture. That's not difficult. Mo nodded and said, Fanny, you are not familiar with the parts of the heavy fusion reactor. The parts you made just now obviously have many mistakes and omissions. While Xionan is studying his quenching technique, I will help you to make up for the knowledge in this area. You said that you wanted to keep everyone busy at the beginning, but if you have an empty head, it will be of no use. Fanny became listless in an instant. She found that she had shot herself in the foot. She didn't expect that she would have to make up for the mechanical manufacturing course that she was least interested in. Nanling said again, in fact, there is another problem. There are many supporting devices in the heavy fusion reactor that are not made of metal. We'd better find substitutes for these parts as much as possible, so as to improve efficiency. Mo nodded. You're right, this is also a very good topic. Fanny, we have to work hard. Fanny, the poor student, was dejected. She couldn't understand. She clearly wanted to play games, so how did it become a large-scale research topic? Chapter 272 Information Leak. During the 2 months of sailing, the members of the Zhuoxia Adventure Group have become the Zhuoxia Research Group. Everyone is busy doing their own research. Fanny, Mo and Nanling are responsible for production. They will replace the production machinery in the early stage, thoroughly implement the principle of practitioners as the first productive force, and continue to implement the plan of handmade large-scale heavy fusion reactors. The complex design was constantly simplified because they suddenly realized that they were used to small-scale fusion reactors, which made it so troublesome. Once the size was enlarged, many of the original problems would no longer be problems. The only trouble is that if they want to build a super-large reactor, they also need super-large raw materials. More importantly, there is also the alloy refining formula. Fortunately, these things were backed up in the Zhuoxia because they had to use up the transaction quota in Chenyuan 06. The alloy operation requires most fine magnetic field control. Fanny's task is to improve the smelting efficiency. This is relatively simple, but when she can do something to the extreme, it also means extraordinary. Nanling's task was not easy either. In addition to participating in the work of enlarging and simplifying the fusion reactor, he was also responsible for developing various spiritual patterns to enhance and assist the functions of the fusion reactor. Nanling was going to replace many of the precision parts that were originally needed with spiritual patterns. For example, for that cooling device, Nanling naturally thought of the cold wind that he knew. In the process of thinking about using the cold wind technique to transform into a spiritual pattern to replace the cooling device, he unknowingly understood the concept of cold. This is very annoying. He has not even studied water magic. How can he have already understood the concept that only high-level magic can have? To be honest, when he found out that his water control technique LV7 was simply numb. Now he feels more and more that the so-called bloodline of talent has restricted his development. With his talent, he can obviously have many choices. But forget it, now focusing on wind magic is also a blessing in disguise, because now whether it is fire magic or thunder magic or the water magic that is inexplicable or reached a high level, it can actually be driven and controlled by wind magic. And it is precisely because of this that Nanling and Mo can be said to be shouldering the most important work together, and the two of them can be regarded as capable people who work harder. Finally, Thongche was not idle. His ability seemed a little clumsy in front of the three people, but he finally found his own direction of expertise. He began to specialize in defense deployment, and by the way, he also learned the blessing techniques of flame ammunition and flame barrage from Fanny. In this case, he also made a suggestion. In the early stage, we can actually invest limited resources in more cost-effective defensive facilities. After all, at this stage, the larger caliber and faster shooting speed can completely overwhelm the advantages of compact machine mobility. Mosking sat in a virtual chair with a calm face and closed his eyes to rest. Countless information flashed through her mind. At this time, she separated some thoughts to think about this problem and said, I agree, it's a good idea. What do you think, Shonen? Nanling was sitting cross-legged. He looked up at something in a trance. At this time, he came back to his senses and said, "Okay, we will follow this plan next time. Speaking of which, our plan has been improved almost, and we can try it again." Fanny just relaxed, but Luigi said in time, "We're about to end the first phase of the voyage and will stop at the Nego space station for rest." This Nego space station belongs to one of the many forces of different sizes in the Milky Way. Because it is not small in scale, it is called a space station, but it is actually a star city, and the surrounding radiation controls 15 star systems. When the Zhuoxia was separated from the hyperspace, Nanling's consciousness returned to the body, and he felt as if he was in another world. He spent 2 consecutive months in the digital space, which was something he had never experienced before. I have to say that it was indeed a bit inconsistent. But fortunately, this feeling passed quickly. When his spirit, energy, and spirit were connected from top to bottom again, the familiar feeling came back. He used a wind escape to go directly to the bridge. Because his wind escape drills through any cracks, Luigi was very considerate to leave a gap on each channel gate of the spacecraft. It's a bit strange to say that this special channel is like the ancient people who would leave a small hole in the wall for some special family members. This is not the most excessive. The most excessive thing is that there is always a gap in Fanny and Mo's room. What does this mean? When Nanling came to the bridge, the first thing he saw was the Star City. It's really magical. This city suspended in space has a very large volume, but it looks like it is made up of countless spaceship hulls. It looks messy, but it shines brightly under the brilliant lights. Luigi explained. The predecessor of the Nego space station is no different from an ordinary space station, but it is one of the important hubs located between the 2 spiral arms of the Milky Way. The huge cargo throughput requires it to have a sufficient volume. The Nego royal family chose to directly use the splicing of spaceship hulls to quickly expand its volume, which led to the current situation. Of course, in the propaganda of the Nego royal family, the current Nego Star City is the most artistic space city in the entire Milky Way. Nanling looked at the huge building complex in front of him, suddenly chuckled and shook his head and said, "It doesn't look as magnificent as the Antarctic Changsheng." Indeed, the Antarctic Changsheng is also a star city strictly speaking, a star city that is far more magnificent and beautiful than this Nego Star City. Of course, this has nothing to do with them at the moment. The Zhuoxia docked at the rather messy airport of the Niche Star. It would take about 4 days to replenish basic materials. This was completely different from the treatment the Zhuoxia received in the Wind Domain and the Ancient Domain. After all, the reputation of the Ge family in the Ancient Domain seemed too far away. There was not much that everyone could do about it. They could only wait patiently. The women on the ship were not in the mood to go shopping. After all, they could see how chaotic they were just from the online community of the Niche Star City. For Nanling, this was almost another lower-class area. Just as they were waiting bored, Nanling suddenly received a call from her mother. "Rose mother. Xiaonan, are you also on the Zhuoxia?" Nanling realized something was wrong at a glance. He said, "I'm here. We just docked for a little while. Have you got the information?" "Rose mother. In fact, we sold a piece of information here half an hour after you docked. But I can't tell you who bought the information. After all, this is not something I handled." Nanling was silent for a while, then quickly responded and said, "So, can I buy intelligence from you?" Madame Rose said readily, "Of course, and if it is in the name of buying intelligence, even if I don't know, I can still retrieve information from the headquarters." Nanling showed a happy smile and said, "Then I want to buy the location of the Death Star pirates, is that okay?" His goal was very clear. It was not to confirm that the person who bought their intelligence was the Death Star pirates, but that they were currently the only enemy in the open. And when the Zhuoxia moved, someone followed suit. Isn't this too obvious? Chapter 273. The place where customers are overcharged is not tolerant. The news from Madame Rose directly detonated the originally lonely bridge of Zhuoxia. Fanny said angrily on the spot, Buy intelligence, no matter how much you spend, as long as you can buy intelligence and know who is snooping about us." The boss spoke readily and said that he would do it at any price. What else could Nanling say? He immediately replied to Madame Rose, "Aunt Rose, we decided to buy the information. The more complete the better. You can name the price." Madame Rose replied at the time, "Public funds?" These 2 words fully reflected how much Madame Rose understands. Nanling hesitated for a moment and replied, "Count us as our own people." Madame Rose immediately said, "Our own people? Then I won't take your money, but I need to share some of it with those who have information channels in the dieting organization, so I'll offer you 300,000 Lingzhu points. If it's just a piece of information, it's about this price. Nanling said immediately. Okay. There was no bargaining, because he knew that Boss Fanny would not care about the price. Wait a minute, I have already contacted you. Madame Rose was just a middleman this time, and she was a middleman who did not make a profit from the price difference. A moment later, she sent out the news about the Death Star pirates. She said, the Death Star pirates are urgently preparing supplies, and it looks like they are preparing for a long journey. Of course, because they are looters, they will not appear in regular airports, but I got news that someone at the junction of the Ancient Domain and the Wind Domain provided a large amount of supplies to the Black Death Emperor. Upon hearing this, Nanling immediately said, more money, I want to know who provided the supplies to the Black Death Emperor. He used Boss Fanny's specialty. Madame Rose immediately became excited. Although there was no commission, this was also a performance. She said, wait a minute, I will change a line for you. No, wait a minute, I can help you find out everything on this line, do you want it? Nanling saw his own mother working so hard, and said at the time, okay, I'll take them all. As for the price, Nanling was hesitating here, and Fanny had already slapped him in front of her and said, why are you frowning? Can't we agree on the price? Oh, why negotiate with those who sell information? The more we pay, the more and more accurate the information they will give us. Just tell them, one price. 5 million. Good guy. Nanling looked at Fan and felt that this spendthrift woman was really hopeless. At least her father knew something about the market. How could she ask for so much money like this? Nanling said at the time. The boss said, one price is 5 million. Madame Rose was stunned at the time. How much? Nanling repeated. 5 million. Madame Rose was startled, and she asked, didn't you say you were one of us? Who is shouting out the price? Nanling said, Fan and I. Mrs. Rose suddenly realized, she said helplessly, you and her are together. How did the topic go off track? Nanling quickly said, no, it's just, Mrs. Rose said. It doesn't matter, if you really like her, remember to screen the genetic genes for your offspring. Nanling didn't know where he started to say the wrong thing, why did it go off track to this point? He quickly corrected. 5 million, no matter what method or channel Auntie uses, we want the most detailed information. Mrs. Rose is a flexible person. When she saw such a sum of money, she didn't care whether it was her own family or not. She responded with a heartache in her heart. I'll take this job. In the future, introduce more jobs like this to your mother, so that your mother will not love you in vain. Nanling. Are you willing to be his mother at this time? It's really realistic. Then Nanling temporarily ended the communication and said, I can't find out who is trying to find out about us through the listening organization, but I know that the Death Star pirates are indeed preparing to set off from the junction of the Ancient Domain and the Wind Domain. Fanny sneered and said, this is too obvious, they are coming for us, right? And this Nego Star City is really leaking information like a sieve, and they even charge such a high berthing fee. Obviously Fanny was very angry. She originally wanted to replenish the spacecraft's supplies here, but when she found that there was no confidentiality here and the fees were very high, she changed her mind. She said, we won't replenish here. Anyway, the spacecraft is only lacking some basic materials for the fusion reactor. We can find a star system to dock and replenish it ourselves. She decided to stay away from this kind of administrative star. So she simply chose to terminate the material replenishment contract, and then directly applied to leave the port, regardless of the fact that she had just paid a lot of docking fees. The eldest lady is so rich and willful. At this time, an official from Nago Airport suddenly connected the communication and said in a very serious tone, Zhuoxia, why did you unilaterally terminate the contract without reason? Do you know how much loss this will cause us? Fanny snorted coldly and said, I don't care what losses you will suffer. The docking fee is so expensive. It's okay that some basic materials are so expensive, but what I can't stand is that if I pay such a large sum of money, I have to wait 4 days for the supply. The official from Nago Airport said unfriendlily, so what, our airport has so many spaceships docking every day, and everyone has to buy supplies. If everyone is like you, wouldn't it be a mess? Listen, people on the Zhuoxia, you have caused great trouble to our work. From the tone, the next step is to blackmail us, right? Fanny said impatiently, I just listened to your offer but I haven't decided to sign the contract. Are you trying to force a sale? The official snorted coldly. Since you have heard the offer, then for us, we have reached an agreement. Pay the money and supply, otherwise you can't go anywhere. As soon as he finished speaking, he actually showed his weapons. Many automatic weapons suddenly appeared around the airport, all aimed at the Zhuoxia. However, this scene seemed commonplace to other people in the airport, as if they had long been accustomed to it. The official at the Nago airport showed a smug look, which was his tried and tested method. Nanling showed a very helpless expression at this time, because he knew his eldest lady too well. Could you tolerate such a thing? So Fanny was furious but had no time to react. Nanling had already said calmly, "Raise the shields, prepare the entire ship for battle." Fanny turned her head in astonishment and looked at Nanling. She was actually wavering between reason and impulse just now. Who would have thought that Nanling, who had always been able to make her rational, would now ask her to make the most irrational decision? Mo also looked over, but she was not surprised. She just said thoughtfully, "Fanny, do you still remember what the master said before, that you could be more arrogant?" Fanny was stunned. What she had thought before was not to cause trouble for Gichen. After all, she also knew the situation their family was facing at the moment. But then she suddenly came to her senses. Yes, the more arrogant I am, the more willing the direct descendants of the clan will be to clean up the mess for me. Not only will they not find it troublesome, they will also be more at ease with our family. So she said cheerfully, "What's the use of just raising the shield? Prepare the main gun." Yes, this time it was Nanling's turn to gasp. He didn't expect that Fanny, who had figured it out, would have such a reaction. It was as if he had released a devil with his own hands. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 274. Rampage. The main gun of the Zhuoxia really started to charge. Fanny said firmly without waiting for the shop Nago official to speak, "Use ancestral precepts, I will never be the first to be shot. Unfortunately, since you have declared war on me, I can only fight back." The high-performance main gun of the Zhuoxia only took 2 seconds to complete the process from start-up to charging. Although this is far from reaching the full equivalent lethality, this is also in the airport rather than a space battlefield. Then without any fuss, Fanny directly turned off the communication with the official and said straightforwardly, "Aim forward and fire." "Why do you need to aim? Just fire forward and it's over." The terrifying white light immediately vented out. This main gun that exploded in the airport directly created a gully in front of it. There were damaged lines everywhere along the way, jumping arcs, which looked extremely miserable. And the automatic weapons on the airport immediately opened fire, and they continued to vent firepower on the spacecraft that broke into the hinterland, trying to destroy it. However, the weapons that had been so arrogant before were now showing their weakness. They bombarded the Zhuoxia and could not even cause a ripple on the shield. If you think about it, you can understand that the shield of the Zhuoxia is at the level of a heavy battleship. It must be threatened by the main gun of a starship to be threatened. How can such an automatic weapon break the defensor? But after such a main gun shot, Fanny was happy, but how should it end? She immediately looked at Nanling and Mo with a pleading look, hoping to get advice from them. Nanling had a headache. He was not good at such a scene. He just wanted to remind Fanny not to be afraid of confrontation, and he was also sure that the dilapidated weapons in the airport could not pose a threat to the Zhuoxia. But he didn't expect that this young lady would directly release the little devil in her heart and do such an excessive thing. Nanling felt that he had no good ideas. He shrugged and admitted frankly, "I can't give any good suggestions in this regard, because my vision is limited. I don't know to what extent Ge clan will support Fan and I." He admitted his weakness. But Kmo said with a wise face, "If we have to consider Ge clan's reaction to decide how far to go, then it doesn't matter if we just blow up the Naiji Star City. A small force with only a dozen administrative stars will not be taken seriously by the Ge clan bosses. Even the Chiling Legion controlled by the Master back then could easily destroy it, so just having a good reason will be enough." Fan and I suddenly realized, there is no need for any reason. They pointed their guns at me first, that's the reason. I know how to grasp this sense of proportion. Nanling had a bad feeling at the time. Could the worst sense of proportion be reflected in Fan and I? Then she waved her hand and said cheerfully, "Let's go all out and go find the Nago royal family to Wagyu." The burning cloud obeyed her will and rushed straight through the hole created by the main gun, completely ignoring all obstacles along the way. Under Fanny's control, the burning cloud was like a destroyer, blasting everything it saw along the way, and no obstacles could pose a threat. Of course, Nego Star City quickly sent many space fighters to intercept. But the space fighters could not penetrate the shield of the burning cloud at all, and they were so powerless to resist the forced penetration of the burning cloud. It was really an extremely brutal insertion, destroying all obstacles along the way, and the main guns continued to bombard and blasted the way forward in an unreasonable manner. What was left along the way was a series of secondary explosions, and those space fighters could not even break through the flames of the secondary explosions. The burning cloud was turning the belly of Nego Star City upside down, blasting them directly from the inside. At this time, there was a call that wanted to be received, but Fanny ignored it and said directly to Liji, "Sister Liji, is there any way to find where their leader is?" Liji said lightly, "It's a small matter. I have located the position of Emperor Nego. There are all kinds of people these days. The Gi family occupied such a large ancient domain and did not claim to be emperor. This Nego Star City has only a few administrative stars and dared to claim to be emperor." Fanny said indifferently, "It's just a makeshift team. Let's kill them. I want to have a good argument with His Majesty Emperor Nego." Nanling was looking at Fanny, who was having fun with a tingling scalp, and then looking at Mo, who had a stern face as if he didn't see anything. He had no idea how to end it. Maybe it's better not to end it at this time, and just throw the problem to the senior executives of the Gi family. He was sighing secretly when he suddenly received a message from Madame Rose. "My dear child, all the information you want is here. Mom didn't make the 5 million from you in vain." Nanling saw the entire data package, and then found that it was actually sent using the network data stream on Manage Star City. "This place is really infiltrated like a sieve," he said. "My dear mother is doing things, of course I feel at ease. Who knows that there is another message from the other side? Okay, since the transaction is completed, you can still call me aunt in the future. Don't show such intimacy. Good guy, when there is business to do, she is a biological mother, and when the business is over, she is an aunt again. What a reality." Nanling looked at the message sent by Madame Rose speechlessly, and then switched without any hindrance. "Okay, aunt, of course I know." He also switched without any psychological burden, otherwise how can it be said that they are mother and son? This pragmatic personality is so similar. Then Nanling said to the high-spirited fan, "Boss, the information you want has arrived. I will pass it to Sister Liji. You can freely retrieve it." Ever since the network base stations of the ancient domain Gi Star suddenly paralyzed collectively, everyone seemed reluctant to directly accept the information sent by Nanling. "Liji, the digital life must be disinfected. Anyway, other people's intelligence cores don't have loopholes or backdoors, so there's no need to put such a terrible hyperspace virus in your own intelligence core." Fanny was stunned and asked, "Why is there still information? I thought I had already got the information I wanted just now." Nanling looked at her blankly and asked, "Boss, you are not fooling you with the movement of the Death Star pirates, are you? This is 5 million Lingzhu points of intelligence fee. It deserves more complete and comprehensive intelligence." Fanny laughed dryly. She probably also realized that she was stupid again. But she still turned her head and said, "Fortunately, you are watching. I know you won't let me suffer." Mo couldn't help but curl his lips when he saw this. "That's enough. This is making a scene in front of my wife, right?" She was already studying the intelligence, and then she was silent for a while and said, "It's really distressing. Although it's not surprising that the industry under Gikchuan's name provided the Death Star pirates with supplies, it's not simple to give Gikchuan the green light and let him mobilize resources through Gi's industry even though he knew there was a problem." Everyone was worried when they heard this, and they felt that the situation had become complicated again. But Fanny didn't want to be bothered by these annoying things. She had already guided the Vuoxia to the center of the Nego Star City, and aimed the main gun at a towering palace in the midst of flames and explosions. No matter what kind of trouble they will face next, at least they can still be domineering now. Chapter 275. Demonstrating divinity in public. Fanny drove her ship directly to the steps of the palace of Nego Star City. This may be unprecedented since the establishment of Nego Star City. However, it happened just like that. As a leader, Emperor Nego did not retreat at this time. Even though he was old and frail, he still pushed away the attendants who were supporting him and came to the top of the palace steps wearing a red robe and a crown. Emperor Nego leaned on his scepter and slammed it hard, then angrily said, "Girl of the Gi family, why do you want to do such an offensive thing?" Emperor Nego personally came out, so Fanny would naturally not avoid it. The hatch of the Vuoxia opened, and Fanny also went out in full dress. The scorching sun slowly rotated behind her, showing its unique light and shadow effects in front of the world for the first time. Fanny's own King Leon armor was very beautiful, and at this time it was rendered by the special effects module in the scorching sun, which immediately made her look like a sun goddess with thousands of feet of light. She looked down at Emperor Nego, making the angry old emperor look like a tyrant who had offended the goddess's majesty. This is, appearance is justice. Nanling was satisfied with her special effects module. This was a successful attempt. Fanny did not leave the shield area of Zhuoxia. She even changed her voice and said in a majestic and solemn voice, "Emperor of Nego Star City, your officials have declared war on me. Are you coming to me now to surrender?" She was so righteous and confident, of course, she really thought so in her heart. But Emperor Nego was furious. He didn't expect Fanny to bully people like this. She did bad things and still wanted to take the blame. He trembled and wanted to say something. But Fanny didn't give him a chance to speak at all, and continued, "You don't have to feel wronged. It was your officials who made me angry, but he is not qualified to bear my anger. Only you can bear this anger." Fanny was actually not very angry now, and she didn't think about getting any compensation at all. After she understood her thoughts, she said bluntly, "Discipline your subordinates. In my eyes, this Nego Star City is already a place of filth and dirt. It is not a pity even if it is completely destroyed. If you are dissatisfied and want revenge, then go to Gyu. The Chilling Fleet will serve you wholeheartedly." Fanny chuckled and returned to the Zhuoxia. She adjusted the angle of the spacecraft carelessly, and another terrifying starship main gun fired out, punching a big hole in the dome of the space station where the Nego Palace was located. Then the Zhuoxia flew out of the hole in such a dignified manner. The Emperor Nego was so angry that he trembled all over. This was an absolute humiliation for him. But let him go to Gyu and let him face the Chilling Fleet. What a joke, wouldn't it be better to live a good life? But he would not let the Zhuoxia go, even if it was the hunting ship of the Gyu family's daughter. Damn it, who is so blind that he can't even recognize a hunting ship? He roared angrily, and then said to the officers around him, "Surround them. If this ship successfully leaves here today, the Nego royal family will lose face." Then the officer next to him froze, and he said, "Your Majesty, the ship just now suddenly disappeared in front of us." Emperor Nego. ... Damn, it's too early to say harsh words. Fanny is actually very smart. Why did she rush all the way from Nego Star City to the Nego Palace? It is because only by breaking through here can she not face the concentrated fire attack of the Nego fleet. After all, if they focus their fire, the Zhuoxia may be able to survive with the defense of the Zhuoxia, but their Nego Palace will inevitably be destroyed together. It was under this situation that the Zhuoxia floated in the void above the Nego Palace, and then turned on the function of the strange object duty, making the entire ship disappear in all the exploration methods of the Nego fleet. This is what an excellent noble hunting ship can do, to play with a not-so-advanced fleet in the palm of its hand. Fanny seems clumsy at times, but she often has amazing wisdom in such life-threatening situations. A group of people successfully broke away and then shouted excitingly. Fanny laughed and pulled Mo's hand and said, "Mo, you see my palms are sweaty, I was scared to death just now." Li Ji's psychic prosthesis stood beside her, her eyes flashing with a gentle smile and said, "But Fanny, your heroic figure has now spread throughout the galaxy. Although the Nego Star City is a small place, it occupies an important transportation route, and the news spreads very quickly." Fanny said indifferently, "Let it spread, at least this way those who bought my information will waste so much money, and I feel happy." Nanlin. He didn't expect that the way this young lady retaliated against the other party was so special, that is, to make the information about his position worthless. This kind of clear thinking is really not something that ordinary people can think of. They were quietly leaving the control area of the Nego fleet at this time, and they needed to remain completely silent to the outside world during this process. Speaking of which, if Fanny hadn't been kind-hearted, it wouldn't have been a problem to just destroy the entire fleet of Nego at once. During the transfer, the topic on the Zhuoxia was no longer Nego Star City, but the forces in the ancient domain that secretly supported the Death Star pirates. It's a pity that the intelligence line of the Ditting organization cannot be developed to the core layer of the Gyu family, otherwise it may not be impossible to get the information of the supporter. Nanling said with regret. Thongqi speculated beside him. Is it still done by Miss Qingfei? Fanny shook her head and said, "No, Gyu Qingfei seems to be favored, but in fact she can't control so many resources by herself. Even if it is, someone is just using her to do this. At this time, she seemed very wise, and it was really a quantum wave-like ability. Mu was very calm about this. She said, "No matter who did it, at least they dare not put such things in the open. And when we are far away from the ancient domain, the impact will be less and less." This was a very steady and smart speech, which immediately calmed the atmosphere on the bridge again. Nanling felt the same way, because when Madame Rose handed them the information, she didn't give any additional explanation, which obviously meant that she didn't worry about Nanling's safety. He thought for a while and reminded, "We still have to tell Uncle and Aunt about this, and remind them, after all, they have to face these things if they stay in the ancient domain." Fanny's face straightened and she nodded repeatedly. She just felt a little strange. Why did Nanling seem to care more about her parents than she did? 2 hours later, Zhuoxia completely broke away, and then immediately flew in hyperspace and landed in the area controlled by Nij Star City. At the same time, they also sent the information to Gichen. After half a day of hyperspace flight, they got Gichen's reply as soon as they popped out of hyperspace. "Got it." Just 3 words, but they exuded a strong sense of confidence. Nanling sighed, worthy at being Fanny's father, just tough. Unlike them, they have to run far away and secretly develop in the wild for a while. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.